The fun life of a troll in the Marvel Universe. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, American-style diving net. After knowing why the captain became as if there was a dog outside, Sherlock let go of harassing the captain, and at the same time, he gave a 6 with one hand for the captain's noble moral level. How to say it, the doctor who made the potion was really right. The potion will amplify a person's personality traits, and this is the captain. If it was someone else, he would not feel so guilty. Anyway, Sherlock would not have any other feelings. After all, he gave the thing away. It has been given away, and what happens next has nothing to do with Sherlock, right? Sherlock even put himself in the result after using the same potion as the captain. How to say it, Sherlock felt that either our ancestor who did whatever he wanted and had a bad personality was born, or he was so lazy that he didn't even want to move his fingers. Well, just thinking about it was enough for Sherlock to feel not so good. Of course, although he decided not to harass the captain, Sherlock's pace of finding fun would not stop. The problem now is that the two little girls no longer care about Sherlock. The reason is very simple. Sherlock forbids them to go near the shooting range to see the machine that all the students like. The two little girls are at an age where they are curious about everything. The more Sherlock forbids them, the more curious they are. The more curious they are, the angrier they are. Naturally, they will ignore Sherlock, the big brother who hinders them. As for Sherlock's 5 uncles, Sherlock dares not to provoke them because the curiosity of the two little girls makes them try to get close to the shooting range every few days. Every time they get close to the shooting range, a student will tip off Sherlock's 5 uncles. Sherlock's 5 uncles are all daughter obsessed, so they will naturally run over in anger to arrest people. This is very confusing. On the one hand, the burning machine has indeed improved the business of the training ground, and the students have trained harder. On the other hand, the two little girls have all kinds of problems because of the burning machine. The combination of the two sides has led to Sherlock's 5 uncles hating and loving the burning machine. As adults, and the elders with the highest status in the training ground, the 5 of them would naturally not really do anything to the machine, but this did not stop them from taking their anger out on Sherlock. Anyway, ever since the two little girls started to go to the shooting range every other day, Sherlock behaved like a quail in front of his 5 uncles, fearing that they would find faults and find reasons to punish him. It seems that the only ones left in the entire training ground were the big sisters from the Red House and the trainees who were training at Sherlock's house. Forget about the big sisters. For some reason, Sherlock always felt that the eyes of the big sisters were full of maternal love when they looked at him, which made Sherlock feel that he had dozens of mothers. He didn't know how to get along with the big sisters. What's more, Sherlock also found that several big sisters were flirting with his 5 uncles. For these big sisters who might become his aunts in the future, Sherlock's attitude was to stay away from them. As for the students, it goes without saying that, since Sherlock and the two little girls performed an extreme 1v2 show match in front of them, the students looked at Sherlock as if they had seen a god. Even Price, who was an instructor, did not have the same treatment as Sherlock, and Sherlock also had the highest authority over the burning machine in the shooting range. Play with Sherlock? Students, I can't afford it. Therefore, Sherlock, who was bored, could only explore his own interests and hobbies to relieve his boredom and have fun. Fortunately, Sherlock's home was very large, with a huge pond in it. In the pond were released freshwater fish, loaches, eels and other fish. This large pond served as a training ground for the swamp wetlands in Sherlock's training ground, and it was also a water dungeon in the interrogation training. The fish in the pond increased the difficulty of the training on the one hand, and was also the only food for the students who were locked in the water dungeon for interrogation training for a few days on the other hand. That's right, Sherlock had set his sights on this place that the students privately called a fish pond, and after a deep exploration of himself, Sherlock decided to become a glorious fisherman. Well, it's definitely not eel noodles, loach stewed with tofu, or dry fried carp. Absolutely not. Sherlock, holding a fishing rod, ran to the pond excitedly. In just 3 days, Sherlock learned how to use an American scoop net. In summary, it was just casting a rod to fish. Not only did the fish not take the bait, but they also hovered around Sherlock's hook and even taunted Sherlock. Then Sherlock was so angry that he screamed and shouted Uncle Damo's classic quote, "Fuck, that fish follows him, and he won't bite. You can't fucking spoil him." Then he jumped into the water with a splash, hugged a huge carp, and then pulled out a Glock from his waist and shot the poor carp in the head. Then, he whistled to himself and walked towards the kitchen with a carp without a head, leaving the students in the water dungeon staring at each other in surprise. Of course, Sherlock's American dip net can only deal with freshwater fish like carp. The American dip net fishing method has no effect on loach and yellow eel. Although Sherlock had no way, Sherlock knew how to get people to come. Under Sherlock's unremitting harassment, he finally got Tony, who was busy at work. Tony was such a player. After seeing Sherlock's American dip net fishing method, Tony looked at Sherlock with an expression of "I'm afraid you have a problem." But soon, the fish in the water made Tony clearly realize how high the IQ of these fish who fought wits and courage with the students in the water dungeon was. How to say it? Question Sherlock, understand Sherlock, become Sherlock. Well, anyway, Tony even called the armor over in the end. Of course, the result of the rage was that the two of them had a delicious dinner of eel noodles, stewed loach with tofu, and a braised carp. At the same time, there was also a ban from Price for the two of them to stay away from the pond. But the two of them, who were already in a rage, didn't care about the so-called ban. In the afternoon, they sneaked to the side of the pond again, and then they were scolded by Price for more than half an hour like a primary school student. What kind of player is Tony? When has he ever suffered such an injustice? In less than 3 days, Tony returned to Sherlock's training ground. Tony came back with more than a dozen armor specially used for engineering machinery, and then Tony was in the shocked eyes of everyone including Sherlock. Commanding his more than a dozen armors, he opened a fish pond behind Sherlock's training ground, and even the cut trees were not spared. Tony built a small wooden house for fishing, and placed it next to the fish pond. Although the fish pond has been built, and Tony has even planted some plants in it to achieve the purpose of ecological cycle, it still takes time for the fry to grow up. Therefore, the two new fishermen who are addicted to fishing decided to go out to sea. Tony has a yacht, and Sherlock has a lot of fishing rods, so they just go for it. So the two of them carried their fishing rods and drove to the beach. The American-style landing net is about to face the test of the sea. Chapter 177. The captain is sick. Just as the two of them had just boarded the yacht, Sherlock had even prepared Tony's exclusive American-style scoop net, but the phone rang. It was Black Widow who called. Sherlock looked at the incoming call reminder on his phone, and answered the phone with a question mark on his forehead. Sherlock knew exactly what image he had in the hearts of these Avengers. He had always been the only one who called to harass them, and they never took the initiative to call him. With a question mark on his forehead, Sherlock quickly answered Black Widow's call. Black Widow actually had nothing else to do, but simply wanted to ask Sherlock if there was any special medicine that could cure colds and fevers. Sherlock didn't understand Black Widow's inquiry, and didn't know what Black Widow wanted to do. After all, a cold or a fever was a minor illness that could be cured by hanging a bottle of water in a community clinic. Why did she ask if there was any special medicine here? Under Sherlock's repeated questioning, Black Widow finally explained the ins and outs of the matter. It was not Black Widow who was sick, but the captain. As we all know, the captain's body has been improved by medicine, and is already the ceiling of human beings. But this ceiling of physical fitness also caused a lot of trouble for the captain. For a healthy adult, the healthiest state is basically a minor cold and fever twice a year. Taking some medicine and hanging water will be fine. But the captain's physical fitness destined him to be different from ordinary people. Generally speaking, the captain will never get sick, but once he catches a cold and fever, he will never get better easily. Even ordinary people hanging water and taking medicine are not so effective for the captain. The ceiling of physical fitness is destined to be the ceiling of the captain's immune quality and metabolic quality. Once he catches a cold and fever, it is a very serious situation. Similarly, the medicine that is easy to use for ordinary people can be said to be minimal for the captain. After all, it has been metabolized by the body's powerful metabolic efficiency before it has time to play a role. So the captain has been hanging water for several days without any improvement, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is still anxious for the captain to take office as soon as possible. After all, some things are difficult to accomplish by S.H.I.E.L.D. agents alone. The most important thing is that in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s cognition, Sherlock should be contacted for potions. After all, the strange potions in the hands of this bear child can be said to be countless. But it just so happened that the captain felt guilty about Sherlock because of the flying broomstick a while ago. Under the entanglement of various factors, the final result was that the captain kept delaying, and his cold became more and more serious. Now he is in a state of bedridden. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, Black Widow couldn't stand it anymore and called Sherlock to ask if there was any special medicine. You really don't say. Sherlock really has it. There is no cold or fever that can't be cured by a bottle of refreshing potion. After learning that Sherlock had a special medicine, Black Widow immediately said that she would send someone to get it immediately. But Black Widow's proposal was directly rejected by Sherlock. After all, that was the captain. Sherlock still couldn't forget the cat girl that the honest captain turned into at the beach hotel. Sherlock immediately said that he didn't need it. He could entrust the wizard to run errands, and the captain was at least the wizard's comrade in arms. If the comrade in arms was sick, it was right to go and see him. Although Black Widow felt that Sherlock was making a fuss a little bit by contacting a wizard for such a small matter, she didn't say anything more when she thought of the wizard's ability to come and go without a trace. After hanging up the phone, Sherlock said hello to Tony and went back to the Holt to change into the classic wizard's outfit, ready to open a portal to Washington. Tony didn't say much after knowing it, but just waved his hand at Sherlock. After all, Tony, who was already in a daze, was now full of American-style landing nets and catching big fish. Seeing that Tony didn't seem to react to his sudden failure to meet, Sherlock didn't think about it anymore and directly came to a small alley in Washington through a portal. The first time he stepped out of the portal, Sherlock took out the small note with the captain's residence and took a look at it and immediately activated the apparition. What Sherlock didn't expect was that the captain was not the only one in the captain's residence, but there was also a black man who was taking care of the sick captain beside the captain. Sherlock's sudden appearance startled the black man, and his scream also startled Sherlock, who then cast a petrifying spell. It was not until the man lay on the ground like a stiff stick that Sherlock could see who the man was. Good fellow, Falcon Sam Wilson. Why the hell is Sam here? Isn't the captain CP the one that reads Pudgy forwards and asterisk backwards? And Sam, who was lying on the ground, also recognized who the man was, the famous wizard. After all, in the entire Avengers, apart from the high-profile Iron Man, the only other person left was the wizard who used magical magic to repair the entire street after the war. Compared to other people, the spectator's favorability towards the wizard is even higher than that of Iron Man. After all, no one can resist a superhero who uses magical magic and can guarantee after-sales service after the war. After both sides saw who was coming, Sherlock rolled his eyes helplessly under the mask and lifted Sam's petrified state. Sam, who had regained his mobility, stood up immediately and rubbed his hands on his pants nervously. Mr. Wizard. Before Sam finished speaking, Sherlock waved his hand to interrupt him. An electronic voice came from under Sherlock's mask. Okay, I know you. Sam Wilson, a good friend of the captain who met in Washington, a retired special operations member of the US Air Force parachute rescue team, with a flying device similar to wings. How is the captain? Sherlock could be said to have stripped Sam's underwear in front of Sam. Listening to Sherlock's words, Sam's eyeballs almost fell to the ground. You know me. Hearing Sam's question, Sherlock's mask showed an emoticon that was obviously disgusted. I know a lot, including your past, present, and future. Okay, stop talking about those nonsense. What's the captain's situation? To be honest, Sherlock's words really scared Sam. He never thought that Sherlock would know him so well. Just the past, present, and future made Sam have great respect for Sherlock. After hearing Sherlock's question, Sam hurriedly said, sorry, I was distracted. The captain is still the same. He has a high fever of 39.7 degrees and has not eaten for almost a day. Chapter 178. The captain's little mouth is smeared with honey. 1. After hearing what Sam said, Sherlock raised his eyebrows slightly and once again gave a 6 to the captain's noble sentiment. Damn, you are almost burning yourself, silly, but you still don't forget your own guilt. Sherlock can only say that he admires the captain very much. With a slight flip of his wrist, like a magic trick, a flask appeared in Sherlock's hand. There was a wooden stopper at the mouth of the flask, and inside the bottle was a liquid that looked hard to describe. Come and help, hold our captain, and open our captain's mouth with your hands, Sherlock said to Sam, while pulling out the wooden stopper on the flask in his hand. After hearing what Sherlock said, Sam, who was not a falcon yet, was still a little confused in his heart, but he still followed Sherlock's order. But the moment Sherlock pulled out the wooden stopper, Sam knew why the wizard asked him to hold the captain. Damn, what the hell is this thing? He swore that even his grandmother's stinky socks that she had never washed in her life were not as impressive as this thing. Is this thing really a potion that can be stuffed into the mouth? Sherlock ignored Sam, who was tangled, and directly pointed the flask at the captain's mouth and poured the potion into it. You know, in order to make the potion more effective, Sherlock bought Snape's special potion in the library. The potency is definitely top notch, but as we all know, the taste of Snape's products, well, it's hard to describe. Facts have proved that Sherlock's decision was not wrong at all. When the potion was poured into the captain's mouth, the captain wanted to struggle out of instinct, but was held down by Sam. A bottle of potion that can be called a liquid devil fruit was poured into the captain's mouth with the cooperation of the two. The moment the potion was finished, the captain also woke up, feeling the unspeakable taste in his mouth, and for the first time, the captain felt that life was not so interesting. Seeing the captain wake up, Sam was very happy. Before the captain and the other two could say anything, the excitement on Sam's face rose. What did he see? The captain's ears were like the whistle of a steam train, constantly spraying steam out. Not only Sam, but even the captain, and found that they seemed to have turned into Thomas the Tank Engine. They looked at Sherlock standing aside with the same confused expression. Don't be nervous, it's normal. It will disappear in about an hour. With the disappearance of the steam, your cold will be almost cured. Oh, by the way, my personal suggestion is to drink more water in this hour. According to Sherlock, this is the body's natural drainage, but I always feel that my mouth is dry and uncomfortable after this thing is over. After hearing Sherlock's medical advice, the captain nodded blankly and opened his mouth to answer. Okay, I got it, SB, don't worry, the nigger next to me will remind me. As soon as the captain finished speaking, his eyes widened, and he covered his mouth in surprise. Sam next to him also looked at the captain sitting on the bed in surprise. Sam couldn't even believe his ears. What did he just hear? The captain actually called him a nigger? Not to mention those two people. Even Sherlock was stunned. It was hard to imagine that the captain, who was always gentle and polite, would swear. To be honest, Sherlock remembered the captain with honey on his mouth when he was watching TikTok on the quilt. After looking in the direction of the captain, Sherlock almost couldn't hold it back at that time. Well, now he can really see the captain with honey on his mouth. Entry, coprophilia. Entry effect, a necessary skill for verbal battles with a group of scholars. You can make the other party an orphan, and all the females in the 18 generations above and below you will not get any benefit from your words. If you get angry, you can make the steel pipe straight, the sea explode, the dead come alive, and the living die. The king of hell will have to light a cigarette for you. Entry time: 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 1 second. The captain seemed to have felt the effect of the entry. He covered his mouth tightly and looked at Sam beside him with an apologetic face, his eyes full of sincerity. The captain's performance directly confused Sam. He just scolded him, and now he apologized to him with his eyes. What the hell is this? He could only look at Sherlock standing not far away with a puzzled look, trying to get an explanation from Sherlock. Sherlock felt that such a captain with a honeyed mouth was quite interesting, but the instructor also explained the current situation of the captain to Sam. Don't be nervous, this is just a side effect. You can think of it as a condition similar to coprolalia. It will disappear in 24 hours. It was the first time that Sam heard such an outrageous side effect. He rolled his eyes helplessly and stood up to say goodbye. After all, there was no point in staying here any longer. The captain would be well in an hour, so there was no need for him to worry about it. Seeing that Sam was about to leave, the captain quickly stood up and prepared to see him off. Thank you for your care, Nico, just like you took care of your white master. I'll treat you to watermelon and fried chicken when you have time. My hair? The captain covered his mouth before he finished speaking. Although his mouth was covered, the sound did not stop. Combined with the ears that were still spewing steam, the captain looked quite funny at this time. Sam was almost doubting his life. If it weren't for the wizard's explanation on the one hand and the captain's eyes full of apology on the other hand, Sam would have wanted to beat him up at this time. After hesitating for a long time, Sam sighed helplessly, waved his hand helplessly at the captain, and then said, "Come on, Captain, you'd better stop talking." After that, he opened the door of the captain's house. Seeing that Sam was about to leave, the captain hurriedly saw Sam off. "I'm sorry, Nico, go home and pick cotton. Stop laughing, SB. You look like a maggot in the toilet when you laugh." Sherlock admitted that it might be interesting to just look at other people's words, but when it happened to him, Sherlock had only one idea: to teach this captain, whose mouth seemed to be filled with honey, a lesson. Chapter 179. The captain's little mouth is smeared with honey too. Sherlock swore that for a moment he really wanted to have a passionate showdown with his current captain, to see who could protect his parents from becoming orphans. But looking at the captain with steam still coming out of his ears, Sherlock hesitated for a moment and gave up this very tempting idea. Well, he was just concerned about the patient, and he was definitely not afraid of the opponent's plug-in. Absolutely not. With a helpless sigh, Sherlock stood up from the sofa, and with a flip of his hand, a bottle of identical refreshing potion was placed on the coffee table in front of him. The captain was about to say something when he saw the potion that impressed him, but unfortunately, Sherlock predicted the captain's behavior, and before the captain could open his mouth, a spell was cast on the captain. Silence. As the spell took effect, the captain was in a bad state. It might be because the spell conflicted with the effect of the entry. The combination of the two was like activating the rebellion of the entry, and it was a high intensity output. At this time, the captain's eyes looking at Sherlock were full of helplessness, grievance, apology, anger, and surprise. Just like a fan-shaped graph, just one glance can make people feel the complex emotions deep in the captain's heart. Although the captain's eyes were extremely complex, the kind of eyes that could be put into a textbook in Hollywood, the captain's two mouths were different. My goodness, it was so flying up and down. The group of rappers on the west coast probably didn't have the captain's current eloquence. The frequency was almost catching up with the jump egg at the maximum power, and the dance left an after image. But even with such high intensity output, no sound was made. It looked like the captain was performing some silent rap. Such an abstract scene really made Sherlock's mouth twitch a few times. After a long time, he calmed down and said to the captain, who was still performing silent rap, "Okay, calm down and listen to me. This bottle of potion is the one you just drank to treat your cold and fever. You drink it yourself tomorrow morning. Because your body has been artificially strengthened by the potion, so relatively speaking, one bottle of potion may not be able to cure your cold. Even if you don't have any symptoms tomorrow morning, you have to drink this thing. I don't want to run again because of this. Do you understand?" Facing Sherlock's words, the captain nodded obediently, and the helpless emotion in his eyes occupied a larger area. Seeing that the captain understood what he said, Sherlock nodded with satisfaction, turned around and was about to start the apparition to leave. But before Sherlock waved his wand, Sherlock's arm was suddenly grabbed by the captain. Sherlock looked back at the captain in confusion, only to see that the captain's eyes were full of prayers at this time, and he tried hard to point his finger at his mouth that was performing silent rap. Seeing this scene, Sherlock's eyes twitched for a long time. After a mental struggle, Sherlock finally decided to ignore the captain's request. After all, according to the current situation, if Sherlock dared to remove the magic, he would definitely lose his parents and become a member of the orphanage in Zorn. To be honest, Sherlock didn't want to experience it. Reluctantly waving his hand at the captain, Sherlock made a simple perfunctory response. "Okay, Captain, you are not a child anymore. To tell you the truth, I didn't use too much magic power. This magic can only last for half an hour at most. If you are really tired, drink some water to overcome it. I really don't want to hear your venomous tongue." After saying that, Sherlock was about to shake off the captain's arm and cast magic again to leave here, but again, before Sherlock waved his wand, his arm was once again pulled by the captain. This time, Sherlock really couldn't stand it. A vicious energy, appeared on his mask, and he bit his back teeth, and said to the captain fiercely, "Captain, don't force me to beat you up in such a cozy place like your home." As if sensing Sherlock's impatience, the captain finally sighed helplessly and let go of Sherlock's arm. Seeing that the captain seemed to no longer stop him, Sherlock successfully activated his magic and disappeared into the captain's home with a crackling sound of space distortion. What Sherlock didn't know was that when his magic took effect, the conflict with the entry led to a very strange thing. That is, although Sherlock couldn't hear what the captain said, he could only know that the captain cursed very dirty through his two lips flying up and down. But the captain could magically hear what he was saying. And the most important thing is that it may be due to the conflict between magic and the entry. The entry that originally prevented the captain from swearing, as long as he controlled himself and didn't speak, was forced to change to a high power output mode like rap. The most important thing is that the captain couldn't even stop it. This is almost like forcing a collection of ancient and modern Chinese and foreign dirty words into the captain's head, who was originally elegant. How could the captain not feel uncomfortable? But it was obvious that Sherlock did not understand the captain's meaning from his eyes, so the captain gave up the idea of struggling any longer. After all, according to Sherlock, it would only take half an hour at most. After Sherlock left, the captain lay on the sofa in his living room with a look of despair on his face, and gradually the captain's demeanor changed. It seemed that he gradually changed from his original look of despair to a state of shock similar to "fuck, can it be like this?" On the other side, Sherlock, after leaving the captain's house, appeared in a small alley. Seeing that there were no people around and no surveillance, Sherlock decisively changed back to his original identity and then walked out of the alley happily. How do you say that? I'm here now. Anyway, I'll just go fishing, eat, and tease little girls when I go back. It's better to take advantage of this incident to travel around. You know, Sherlock has never been to Washington. Now that he's here, there's no reason to let him go, not to mention that it's no big deal to go back. Therefore, Sherlock took out his phone without any guilt and planned his trip, then walked out of the alley happily. He found a restaurant with good reviews on the internet and happily ate a real Washington French meal. Only then did he find a hotel that looked good and booked a room. What? Why eat French food in Washington? Nonsense. What traditional food can a country that was founded less than 300 years ago have? Chapter 180. The captain's little mouth is smeared with honey. 3. The next day, Sherlock got up early. After washing up, Sherlock checked out of the room and took a taxi to the Lincoln Memorial on the central axis of Washington. Just saying it, you may not know where it is, but if you say the towering obelisk, I guess everyone knows it. What? You still don't know? Then what if I say the famous scene when Captain America and Falcon were running? That is, the place of the classic on your left scene. That's right, Sherlock came here, and it is also one of the must-visit places in Washington. Just like an ordinary tourist, Sherlock followed the large group into the so-called Lincoln Memorial, and also took advantage of the explanation of the tour group next to him. Looking at the white marble sculpture of Lincoln sitting on the throne, Sherlock curled his lips, but still took out his camera to take a few photos. After that, Sherlock, who felt quite bored, left here, sat on the marble steps at the door, and took out the pancakes he bought on the roadside from the library, and started to eat breakfast. Yes, you read that right, pancakes. God knows how excited Sherlock was when he saw a Chinese pushing a cart to sell this stuff on the streets of Washington. Just as Sherlock was eating with his mouth full of oil, a figure Sherlock was very familiar with ran slowly towards Sherlock around the fountain in front of the Lincoln Memorial. It was the Falcon he saw yesterday. Sherlock instinctively wanted to stand up and say hello, but the next second Sherlock remembered that he met Falcon yesterday with a vest, but now Sherlock was obviously not wearing a vest. Thinking of this, Sherlock sat down again with a lack of interest and began to exert force on the pancake in his hand. Just as Sherlock ate the last bite of the pancake beautifully, and then with the help of the cover of his pocket, he silently and without a stick, cleaned the garbage bag in his hand. Another familiar figure appeared in Sherlock's sight. Blonde hair, big pectoral muscles, running very fast. It's Captain America. Seeing Captain America getting closer and closer to Falcon, Sherlock began to get excited. Was he going to witness the famous scene of On Your Left? But soon, Sherlock knew that he was wrong, and very wrong. Because as the captain approached, the shining words on the captain's head finally blinded Sherlock's eyes. Coprophilia. Sherlock looked at the words on the captain's head, which were exactly the same as yesterday, speechlessly, and didn't know what to say for a moment. If you want to say that the captain was lucky, he drew the same words as yesterday. Sherlock has been doing this for so long, and even when Tony drank the potion as water, there were no identical words twice. But if you want to say that the captain was unlucky, his words were exactly the same as yesterday, which can be said to be the words with the least side effects. It was very tangled. Although Sherlock was very tangled, it did not delay the captain's rapid approach to the running Falcon. The Falcon obviously also noticed the captain getting closer and closer, and began to run at full speed. But Falcon obviously still had the physical fitness of an ordinary person. Facing the captain with the peak physical fitness of humans, Falcon could not stop the captain from shortening the distance between them, even if he risked his life. Falcon, who was almost psychologically traumatized by the captain, did not want to hear the captain's words on your left at all. So this time, when the captain approached, Falcon decided to take the initiative. Good morning, Captain. Facing Falcon's friendly greeting, the captain subconsciously wanted to reply, but the captain forgot that he had drunk Sherlock's potion in the morning according to the doctor's advice. The original friendly greeting turned into a sentence when it came to his mouth. Don't get close to me, SB. Falcon had no idea that the captain had the same side effects as after drinking the medicine yesterday, and immediately shouted with a hint of anger, "Hey." But the captain seemed to be guilty and had no intention of stopping. He wanted to explain, but the words turned into a sentence when they came to his mouth. Go home to pick cotton. This made Falcon so angry that he used all his strength to chase the captain, cursing while running. Damn it. Stop right there. Sherlock almost laughed out loud while watching this scene. He sat on the steps and laughed until he was in vibration mode. To be honest, it was only because Sherlock was wearing a cap that covered his face tightly. Otherwise, if the captain spotted Sherlock, he would have to beat him up. On the other side, the captain finally stopped and saw Falcon running over with an angry face. The captain finally apologized and carefully handed Falcon a note. The note explained in detail why he was like this. This was also the temporary solution that the captain came up with after experiencing a half hour of swearing yesterday. It was also a small bug. Falcon saw the captain handing him a note with an apologetic look on his face, and at the same time, he bit his mouth tightly. His anger gradually subsided a little, and he looked at the note in his hand with a hint of doubt. After seeing the contents of the note, the original anger disappeared in an instant and began to change to another emotion, just like the feeling of being unable to defecate. Captain, you. Forget it, Captain, you'd better not talk. I'm really afraid that you will be beaten. Although ordinary people can't beat you. Seeing that Falcon seemed to no longer care about his foul mouth, the captain's expression improved a little, and he once again made an apology gesture to Falcon. Only then did Falcon take the note he had just handed over in a tangled expression and prepared to pack up and go home. He couldn't not go home. If he continued like this, his good reputation would be ruined. If someone posted it on the internet, it would be a complete collapse of his personality. The captain himself still had some vital baggage. After returning home, the captain had just finished taking a shower, and the screen of the Nokia thrown on the table by the captain lit up. He picked up the phone with some confusion and looked at it. It was a message from Harry Ludan to summon the captain. There is a mission. The captain secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Damn, There was finally a mission. To be honest, if there were no more missions, he would probably go crazy, just because he always swore. The captain was in a good mood and packed up happily, then rode his motorcycle to the headquarters of SHIELD, the Trident building. To be honest, the captain had never felt that going to work was so refreshing. Chapter 181. The little mouth is smeared with honey. Captain 4. The captain had no obstacles along the way. Even in the Trident building of the SHIELD headquarters, some people greeted the captain, and the captain nodded in response with a smile. The captain found that, as long as he didn't open his mouth, it would be an extremely beautiful day. Along the way, he came to the door of Black Egg's office on the upper floor of the Trident building without any obstacles. The captain stood at the door of the office and knocked. After hearing the sound of Black Egg coming in, the captain calmly opened the door. At this time, in Black Egg's office, Black Egg was sitting in his chair, and Black Widow was sitting opposite Black Egg, holding a document and reading it. The captain saw this scene as soon as he pushed the door in. Black Egg saw the captain coming in and greeted the captain happily. "You are finally here, Steve. There is a task for you and Natasha to complete together." Hearing what Black Egg said, the captain wanted to open his mouth to agree conditionally, but the words turned into something else when they came to his lips. "Fuck. I really didn't expect that after I slept for 70 years, my boss turned out to be a stingy black man after I woke up. The most important thing is that I have to listen to this black man." As the captain's voice fell, the whole office suddenly became quiet. Not to mention Black Egg. Even Black Widow's eyes were wide open, and she popped out from behind the documents in her hand with a look of surprise, looking at Black Egg sitting opposite her, and then looking at the captain, who was also surprised. After a while, Black Egg finally reacted. "Damn it, I think of Nick Fury, the famous American fucking man, who can speak fluent fucking, and can say whoever he wants to, but now I'm being scolded by you, the thick-browed and big-eyed Captain America. Damn it, Uncle can't stand it." Immediately, Black Egg was ready to open his mouth and have a passionate quarrel with the captain in the zone region, so that the captain could see whether he, the fucking man, was a person who deserved his reputation in vain. However, before Harry Luden could exert his strength, the captain handed Harry Luden and Black Widow 2 pieces of paper with an apologetic look on his face. After seeing the contents of the paper, the two fell silent for a moment. The reason was very simple. They had also taken Sherlock potion and knew how overbearing the side effects of Sherlock potion were. Looking at the captain, who sat in his seat without saying a word but looked apologetic, after handing over the note, Harry Luden finally took several deep breaths before continuing to speak. "I have to say, Captain, your side effect is really, well, hard to describe. I suggest you stop talking." Listening to Harry Luden's words, the captain could only nod helplessly. After sorting out the mess, Harry Luden also began to assign tasks to the two. Of course, it was mainly the captain. Black Widow came relatively early, and Harry Luden had already explained to Black Widow what should be explained before the captain came. The mission was very simple. It was to cooperate with the field team led by Crossbones to rescue the SHIELD employees trapped on a freighter. It was that simple. The specific situation would be explained to everyone by Crossbones on the plane. After seeing Black Sorseg explain the situation, the captain and Black Widow nodded and walked towards the top apron. Crossbones Brock Rumlow was already waiting in the cabin. After seeing the captain and Black Widow in place, Rumlow ordered the pilot to take off. After a while of climbing, the plane slowly turned into a stable cruising stage. Rumlow also stood up and began to brief everyone on the mission. The mission is very simple. Approach the freighter, break in, find the hostages, and rescue the hostages. It's that simple, Rumlow said while operating the big screen on the plane. "Who are the hostages?" Black Widow asked the key question after seeing Rumlow, who was not in good shape now. Hearing Black Widow's words, Rumlow was stunned for a moment, and then began to operate quickly. Soon a bold image with glasses appeared on the big screen. Seeing the target appear on the big screen, Rumlow continued. "Didn't the director tell you anything? Agent Sitwell, code name, let me see, my idol Iron Man can beat 10 American werewolf captains." Rumlow's voice became smaller and smaller, and he even bit his lips tightly at the end to prevent himself from laughing. But in contrast, the captain was not so calm. Although the captain did not show it on the surface, this was the first time that the captain felt that the effect of his side effects was great. So he no longer suppressed his nature of wanting to speak and said to everyone, while lowering his head to organize his equipment, "I'll go down first, and you bunch of dead sissies will wait for my command later. Let me rescue this SB hostage with my own hands." After saying that, the captain walked towards the door of the plane, emphasizing it again as he walked. "Wait for my command, you idiots." Seeing that the captain was not normal, and thinking about the code name that Agent Sitwell had obtained, Rumlow tried to suppress his smile and replied nonchalantly, "Okay, Captain, your mouth is full of honey." Rumlow's ridicule directly filled the originally serious cabin with laughter. Those team members who had been trying to hold back their laughter since the appearance of Agent Sitwell's code name could no longer suppress their laughter, and they all started to laugh out loud. Only Rumlow looked at Black Widow, who was trying to suppress her laughter with a puzzled expression. Black Widow looked at the puzzled look that Rumlow gave her and immediately understood what Rumlow meant. She made a gesture of raising her glass to drink to Rumlow, and looking at Black Widow's actions, Rumlow immediately understood the reason. Sherlock's potion. Although this thing was sold to S.H.I.E.L.D. at the beginning, it was agreed that only a few people could use it. But in fact, Henry Luden didn't care about that. Anyway, Sherlock couldn't monitor who used the potion, right? Similarly, such a magical potion naturally attracted the attention of Hydra. The reason why they didn't care about this potion was that, although Sherlock's potion was easy to use, the side effects were too uncontrollable. When the experiment was first conducted, an unlucky guy turned into a talking pickle in front of everyone, which directly made Hydra give up the idea of making trouble for Sherlock. After all, in their opinion, such an unstable thing is better not to have it. However, despite this, Sherlock's potion is still very popular among these field team members. After all, that thing is really easy to use, but the stock is too small. However, as one of the few people who have personally experienced Sherlock's potion, Rumlow himself can be said to have always kept a respectful attitude towards Sherlock's potion. After all, the time when he was a test subject left a very deep impression on Rumlow. It was a full 24 hours. If modern medicine had not been relatively advanced, it would be a question whether he could have survived. Chapter 182 Sherlock's Travels in Washington 1. While the captain was talking trash and swinging his shield like a hammer, Sherlock was unusually calm. It was even a little weird. The reason was simple. Sherlock was standing among a group of Chinese grandpas and aunts, talking and laughing, as if they had known each other for a long time. In front of this group of grandpas and aunts, there was a Chinese tour guide holding a small flag with a speechless face. As for why this happened, the reason was very simple. It all started when Sherlock saw the not so authentic "On Your Left" scene at the Lincoln Memorial. After seeing the famous scene of the modified version of the captain's honey, Sherlock felt satisfied and began to continue his travel career. But soon, Sherlock was confused. Yes, confused. After a quick look at the obelisks and other things in the memorial park, Sherlock didn't know what to do next. And the most important thing is that, after watching all this, Sherlock's summary is boring. I can only say that it is worthy of being a country without history. They are all capitals, and they all have the filter of the capital. Look at our big 4-9 city. That guy, under the influence of 5,000 years of culture and history, has beautiful scenery and delicious food. Look at the Great Wall, how majestic. Look at the alley, how heavy the history is. Look at the Forbidden City again. Well, this is a bit bullying, so I won't say much. Just look at the exquisite bracket structure. Any of the above can beat Washington, which is also the capital. What do you see in Washington? Stone, stone, or fucking stone. At most the type and color of the stone are different. And the same stone building, the European side can at least make people imagine the ups and downs that this building has experienced, those legendary things, and whether those legendary figures will pass by this building one day. But here, it is really a completely stone building. Not to mention the food. Never mind those BJ snacks, such as bean juice, fried dough rings, fried liver, and stewed meat, whether they are delicious or not, and whether outsiders can eat them. At least they have local characteristics, right? Look at what the special dishes here are. Hamburgers, French fries, BBQ, fried chicken, cola, salad dressing. In Washington, if you want to eat some special dishes, you can go to Chinese restaurants, Mexican restaurants, French restaurants, and Italian restaurants. Anyway, there are no restaurants for locals. Based on the above situation, Sherlock, who was standing at the entrance of the park, was confused as expected. The three philosophical questions kept echoing in Sherlock's head. Who am I? Where am I? And what should I do? However, as the saying goes, there are countermeasures for every policy. Sherlock was confused for a while, and then immediately thought of a brilliant idea. Before crossing, Sherlock had seen a video of a foreign blogger on a certain audio platform. The content of the video was very simple. If you come to a strange place without any strategy, how should you enjoy it? The answer given by this blogger is very simple. Find a tour group full of Asians, or follow the Asians who are traveling. Do what they do, and buy what they buy. Because Asians are used to making careful plans before traveling, they even book souvenir shops before departure. The above remarks are from real videos, not the author's imagination. Sherlock's main point is to listen to advice. He immediately found a tour group full of grandpas and aunts and followed them. When they got on the bus, Sherlock took a taxi and followed behind them. When they got off the bus and started to tour, Sherlock stood behind the group of grandpas and aunts with a harmless smile on his face, listening to the explanation of the young lady. It can only be said that Sherlock was lucky. This was a Chinese tour group, and they were all grandpas and aunts who were not short of money. They also signed up for a pure play tour group, and the explanation of the tour guide was also very humorous. Anyway, Sherlock felt completely happy, but in contrast, other people didn't think so. At the beginning, it was the tour guide who discovered Sherlock standing at the back of the team, but the tour guide didn't pay much attention to him. She just thought Sherlock was the kind of foreigner who wanted to practice Chinese listening here. After all, as a tour guide, she can only say that she often sees such situations. But after they changed the scene, Sherlock still appeared in the team, and the tour guide immediately became alert. Fraud? Gangs? Terrorists? Or the weird perverts on the website? That can't be said. At this moment, the tour guide's head was full of those weird villains in American action movies. The tour guide even swore that, if Sherlock suddenly attacked, she would definitely protect these compatriots far away from home, and fulfill her duties as a tour guide. To be honest, if it weren't for Sherlock's innocent and kind expression and the fact that he didn't look very old, the tour guide might have called the police at this time. Although the tour guide was alert, she didn't say much. In addition to being wary of Sherlock, she also explained a lot. But the uncles and aunts in the team didn't care so much. One of the aunts noticed that Sherlock, a foreigner, had been following them. She tugged at the clothes of the uncle next to her and said without any hesitation, "Old man, look, that ghost has been following us. I'm afraid he has some bad intentions." After hearing what the aunt said, the uncle just glanced at Sherlock standing at the back of the team and then said slowly, "What are you afraid of? I was able to beat those American devils back then, so I can do it too. Just listen to the girl's explanation. Let me tell you, we have penetrated into the enemy's interior now, and I might even have to lead the way for those soldiers. Just be at ease, keep an eye on the money in your bag, and leave the rest to me. Don't be afraid. He's going to meet the stupid foreigner with me. It's no big deal." Although he said this, he still gathered a few uncles who were passing by and drove the group of aunts to the front of the team. The group of old men stood at the back, and even formed a double team formation for Sherlock. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Sherlock's Travels in Washington 2. Seeing that the old men began to surround him, even Sherlock, who had received certain military training, could see that these old men had tactics. The younger and stronger ones were the main attackers, dealing with Sherlock head on, and the rest were auxiliary, dealing with Sherlock from the side. Even because they were afraid that the strength on the side was not enough, the number of people on both sides was far more than the number in front. Seeing that if he didn't explain it, He might have to face something. Sherlock could only weakly raise his hand. The scene instantly became quiet when the Chinese with a hint of northeastern accent came out. Well, uncles, let's just say, is there a possibility that I just want to get your itinerary and explanation for free, and there is no other intention? Sherlock's words made the scene quiet for several minutes. No one knew how to react next. Even Sherlock was embarrassed and didn't know how to react. After all, the group of uncles and aunts did not avoid Sherlock when they communicated, and the whole process was in Chinese. Who would have thought that Sherlock could understand Chinese? Isn't this a conspiracy out loud? Sherlock was also embarrassed. Although he heard the auntie's loud conspiracy, Sherlock, who just wanted to get some help, didn't mean to point it out. The best situation was that everything would be peaceful. It was because he saw that the uncles were about to start fighting, and if he didn't explain, it might be a melee, that Sherlock spoke. But the situation after he spoke was really something Sherlock didn't expect. After a while, an auntie seemed to react and screamed, "Laoliu! Laoliu! Did you hear that? This foreigner is speaking human language." As soon as the auntie said this, Sherlock couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. There were so many complaints that Sherlock didn't know where to start. Fortunately, Sherlock's mouth reacted faster than his brain. As soon as the auntie finished speaking, even the uncle named Laoliu didn't react. Sherlock started to complain directly. "Well, auntie, what I'm saying is there a possibility that, in this situation, you are the foreigners?" As Sherlock's complaint landed, the originally tense atmosphere suddenly became cheerful, and only the auntie scratched her head in embarrassment. Seeing that Sherlock knew Chinese, the uncles and aunties also became lively. When the tour group was walking to the transfer site, they pulled Sherlock to chat about this and that. Especially one of the uncles pulled Sherlock to complain when they were transferring. "Stupid boy, believe me, your Chinese teacher is not good. This idiot taught you dialect. If you want to find one, you have to find a Chinese teacher like me who speaks standard Mandarin." Listening to the uncle's standard trump, Sherlock wanted to cry without tears. He really wanted to tell this uncle that he learned Chinese from his mother before he crossed over. "And uncle, don't you really know that you are speaking authentic trump, not standard Mandarin?" Although Sherlock was already complaining crazily in his heart, on the surface, Sherlock still looked like a good boy and agreed. After all, he was taking advantage of other people's travel plans, so it was better not to make too much noise. The communication between the uncles and aunts and Sherlock naturally could not escape the attention of the tour guide, but the guide did not say anything. Although it was very annoying to be a freeloader, after all, Sherlock, as a local foreigner, knew Chinese and could undertake part of the translation work. Moreover, as a local, he could also guarantee the safety of the tour group to a certain extent. The young lady had no reason to refuse. In this way, Sherlock, who had become familiar with this group of uncles and aunts, successfully got a seat on the bus and started his pleasant trip to Washington with this group of uncles and aunts. The only one who felt uncomfortable was the driver. Although the driver was also a Chinese, he was a native-born Chinese in the United States after all. He saw that this group of fellow villagers brought a blonde and blue-eyed foreigner. This foreigner sang songs about the motherland and unity as strength with these grandpas and aunts in the car. He even shouted slogans like "down with imperialism" and "down with capitalism" when he was in the mood. This matter seems outrageous, no matter how you look at it. Of course, all this is not without cost for Sherlock, especially when these grandpas and aunts know that Sherlock is still single. They launched traditional arts, urging marriage, and introducing a one-stop service. This guy scared Sherlock. Damn, I have changed the world. Why can't I escape the destruction of the army of urging marriage? That guy, this granddaughter, that daughter, kept introducing Sherlock, making Sherlock want to cry without tears. You have to know that if Sherlock's business guys in China, none of them will be sentenced to less than 10 years in prison. Even if they report it truthfully, they may not be able to enter the country. In this situation, what kind of relationship is there? What's more, Sherlock himself doesn't think about dating. The shadow and a cast on Sherlock is too huge. Seeing that Sherlock seemed to be uninterested in the blind date requests from these aunties, the uncles and aunties immediately changed their minds and began to match the tour guide and Sherlock. This time it was the tour guide's turn to panic. What was she doing? Was she going to lose her nationality for going to work? She quickly said that she had a boyfriend, which calmed the uncles and aunties down. Sherlock finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, these uncles and aunties didn't know English. If Sherlock even had one of them who knew English, he would not have escaped the fate of a blind date. What? Where did the blind date come from? Aren't there all beautiful ladies on the street? Sherlock, who escaped this difficulty, finally had a normal trip. Apart from anything else, Sherlock was really used to the domestic tour group's way of traveling, sleeping on the bus, stopping to pee, and getting off the bus to take pictures. Maybe it was because he traveled like this in his previous life. Of course, Sherlock was not a stingy person. When buying souvenirs, he also played the characteristics of a local. Everyone in the tour group received a small gift from Sherlock, even the driver. Of course, if everyone in the tour group had it, then the people around Sherlock naturally had it too. The Black Widows were just small souvenirs, and the Talalita were 2 luxury wallets. It is worth mentioning that Sherlock bought things for his 5 uncles. Those guys bought all women's products, including cosmetics, lipsticks, bags, etc. As for why he chose this way, the reason is very simple. You can't expect those 5 tough guys like Steele to give normal gifts to those Black Widows who flirt with them. Don't ask Sherlock how he knows it. Xiao Qiang still has a pink carved Glock 17 pistol in the drawer, and a woman's name is carved on the ivory handle. Whenever he mentions this gun, Price's wine collection will suffer. Xiao Qiang will also appear in the training ground the next day wearing Price's special sunglasses, dark circles under his eyes. Chapter 184 Sherlock's Travels in Washington 3. Only Xiao Qiang can complete this so-called ultimate challenge in the training ground alive. The remaining challenges include taking off Price's hat in public and stealing all the ghost's headgear. Of course, the first one is to shave Price's caterpillar-like beard. There is only one person who has completed this task and is still alive, and that is Sherlock. When he first crossed over, Sherlock completed this feat. Of course, the result was tragic. The guy was almost sent to the hospital by Price. I have gone too far. Let's talk about Sherlock's travel notes in Washington. After a few days of travel, the last stop of the entire tour group in Washington was the very famous presidential residence, the White House. To be honest, Sherlock and this group of uncles and aunts were very lucky. They just caught up with the open day of the White House and could go in to visit the interior of the White House. That's right, it was the place that was bombed 38 times in movies and games, and I don't know how many times it was occupied. Sherlock even went in to visit the legendary Oval Office. After a round of walking, Sherlock gave the evaluation that it was not as interesting as Tony's villa, with old decoration and old-fashioned facilities. If it weren't for the tour guide who combined almost all the black materials, gossips, and various rumors of the 3 presidents, and explained them vividly, Sherlock might have just seen a bigger broken house. But you have to admit that the tour guide's explanation was still interesting, especially when she spoke about the gossips, rumors, and black materials of the current president in Chinese in front of the staff in the White House. Sherlock laughed the loudest. It's very exciting, isn't it? It feels like bullying foreigners who don't understand Chinese, smiling and cursing with thumbs up, and the main point is excitement. After finishing this trip to the White House, Sherlock also officially said goodbye to this group of lovely uncles and aunts. After all, they will leave Washington and continue to travel somewhere else. But Sherlock wanted to stay here for a while, not because he didn't visit enough, but because he had a little idea that he wanted to put into practice. As we all know, XXX's visit is an absolute bad habit of tourism, especially when it is placed on the beautiful mountains and rivers and scenic spots in China. But unfortunately, this is the lighthouse country on the other side of the ocean. Sherlock can be said to have no psychological burden, and compared with the old XXX's visit, Sherlock decided to do a big job. Just take it as revenge for the fact that he wanted to go to the toilet in the White House, but was ruthlessly rejected. After finding a hotel, Sherlock took a beautiful bath had a meal, and began to rest, ready to take action, when it was late at night. After sleeping until the early hours of the morning, Sherlock got up and packed himself up. After putting on his wizard vest, Sherlock calmly cast an illusion spell on himself, and then appeared on the roof of the White House in a flash. After thinking about it, Sherlock smiled wickedly and tapped the roof of the White House with his wand, and then leisurely found an open door and entered the interior of the White House. The White House was still bustling in the middle of the night. Of course, the bustling here refers to the work area, and the living area is of course unusually quiet. After all, the president needs to rest, doesn't he? However, Sherlock's target is not the living area, but the control room at the junction of the two. During the day, Sherlock already knew one thing. This control room is responsible for the lighting, video surveillance, and music playback of the entire White House. And what Sherlock is interested in is the music playback part. The White House will play some music regularly during the day. On the one hand, it can be used to attract tourists, and on the other hand, it can also provide some background music for people inside. Of course, when the White House is closed, this so-called background music will not appear. Sherlock specially checked it online before taking action. After confirming that the White House will still be open tomorrow, he was satisfied and copied the songs he prepared into the player. At the same time, he did not forget to delete all the remaining songs in the player, to ensure that only one of his songs can be played in a single loop. After doing all this, Sherlock ran back to the hotel with the Phantom, then checked out decisively, found an alley, and returned to his gun shop. Lying on the bed with peace of mind, set the alarm, and waited for tomorrow's news. The next day, the sun rose as usual. When the first ray of sunlight in the morning shone on the red flag flying on the top of the White House, those who had just gone out immediately realized that something was wrong. Damn it, how did our White House become the Red Palace? Also, didn't the Russian bear disintegrate during the Cold War? When did it resurrect? It doesn't matter if it's resurrected, but it occupied the presidential residence of the United States overnight. Especially when it was bright, accompanied by the set program. When the passionate Soviet march resounded throughout the White House, the situation finally got out of control. The sky was full of helicopters of TV stations that were broadcasting live, and there were a lot of spectators on the ground. The National Guard drove tanks and armored vehicles and began to march towards the White House. Oh, now it should be called the Red Palace. The current president, who was on vacation, was dreaming in bed when he was pulled up by the staff who rushed in. He was dragged into a room full of officials before he could understand what was going on. The president, who was still in his pajamas, was naturally furious when his sweet dream was disturbed. He asked the officials to give him a reasonable explanation. Then he saw an official silently turning on the TV in the room. When he saw the live broadcast on TV, even the president was stunned for a while. His first reaction was not to scold people, but to pick up the phone beside him and make a call without saying a word. The moment the call was connected, all the anger of the president was released in an instant. Nick Fury, I need you to give me a perfect explanation. Sherlock certainly couldn't know that, because of his little prank, the black salted egg side was in big trouble. Even if he knew, he would only laugh more happily. After all, right now, Sherlock was already lying on the sofa at home, watching the host on TV making up stories in a serious manner, and he was rolling around on the sofa holding his stomach and laughing so hard. Chapter 185 The Scapegoat Black Braised Egg. Sherlock swore that he had never seen such an efficient American government. In less than half an hour, the National Guard drove tanks and armored vehicles to surround the entire Red Palace. It was like surrounding the enemy's capital. Then in the TV camera, the special forces formed a tactical formation and began to move towards the building. The good news is that there was no gunshot throughout the whole process, because those who had worked in the White House for a night had no idea what was going on. After confirming that there was no threat at all, the National Guard quickly imposed martial law on the streets around the White House, and then organized people to build engineering mesh to block the view. Half an hour later, the entire White House was blocked by barriers. Anyway, from the live broadcast on the ground, it was impossible to see what was happening inside. Then in less than 5 minutes, the entire live broadcast room quickly disappeared. 10 minutes later, not only on TV, but even on the entire network, there was no news of the White House turning red. It was as if the whole thing didn't exist at all. After the 5-minute advertisement, it was back to normal TV programs. It was impossible to tell that the two hosts were passionately guessing what happened to the poor house. Seeing that the fun seemed to be over, Sherlock calmly turned off the TV and didn't forget to complain that if this efficiency was put into people's livelihood, the lives of the American people would be greatly improved. But even so, Sherlock felt that this fun was enough to make him laugh for a long time. As we all know, according to the law of conservation of smiles, if Sherlock gets more smiles, then naturally someone loses a smile. And the person who lost a smile was naturally the president, who was pulled out of the bed and his brother in distress, the famous black-boiled egg Mr. Nick Fury. Let's talk about the president first. After he sprayed trash at the black-boiled egg for half an hour and performed a wave of what a senior Allegro artist is in front of all the senior officials, he still felt that he hadn't vented his anger. The president, who had turned into a mad dog, wanted to bite everything he saw, and as the son of the owner of the red flag, Damal was naturally the first to bear the brunt. At the moment, when the foreign minister connected the video communication between the two sides, the senior American officials present clearly saw that the brothers of Damal on the other side were waving their own and their father's flags, while holding the bottles in their hands and drinking wildly. They looked like they were attending a private party of college students, crazy and excited. The president's face was gloomy when he saw this scene, and he looked at the foreign minister as if he was going to eat him in the next second, and the foreign minister was so scared that he started coughing wildly. Hearing the coughing sound, the group of officials in Damal's family, who seemed to be dancing like a group of demons, seemed to have just discovered the video call. In an instant, the flags and bottles in their hands disappeared without a trace, and even the dissolute figure became extremely serious in an instant, and even the bureau was angry. Before the American diplomats could say anything, the head of the Russian officials stood in front of the video call and gave this side a diplomatic 3 command. It has nothing to do with me. I express my sympathy and continue to pay attention. To translate it, it means that I didn't do this. Didn't you see that I was also eating melons? There is a perpetrator for every injustice. If you don't believe it, you can also disintegrate one, so that you can go to heaven, and ask my old father, who has long passed away. After saying that, regardless of how this side reacted, he took a sip of vodka and quickly hung up the phone. To be honest, if it weren't for the last sip of vodka in the corners of the mouth that the head didn't suppress throughout the whole process, the people present might really believe the other side's diplomatic 3 command. And the other side's actions were also very quick. The phone had just been hung up, and the international statement had already come out. This made the president, who wanted to do some tricks secretly, even more angry, and he directly smashed everything he could move in the office where they were. The president was furious and incompetent, and Nick Fury, the black-boiled egg, was not feeling well either. As soon as he hung up the phone, Nick Fury contacted his right-hand man Hill to learn about what happened. After learning the full picture of the matter, Nick Fury, who was already dark-faced, became even darker. He even thought for a while that he had a conflict with something, or that he had a retrograde Mercury recently. Why did things happen one after another? First, Black Widow and Captain America took the USB treatment back from the freighter, and Black-Boiled Egg found that he did not have enough authority to open it. Now this matter has not been settled, and this happened here. As an old man who has been on the battlefield for a long time, Nick Fury certainly knows what the president means by calling him so urgently. Is he taking the blame? It's not the first time. But what is different from the past is that Nick Fury can use his authority as shield and his strong attitude to fool around with the past. But this time, the White House turned into a red palace overnight, and the red flag was planted on the White House, and no one has discovered how it was done. Isn't this definitely a supernatural event that S.H.I.E.L.D. is responsible for handling? In other words, even if Nick Fury doesn't want to take the blame, he has to take it. What makes Nick Fury most uncomfortable is that he really has a suspect. According to the information he has at present, there is only one person who can complete all this overpass without anyone knowing, and that is the wizard. And according to the wizard and Sherlock, the bear kid, who have the same bad character, he can definitely do this. The most important thing is that when the captain was sick a few days ago, it was the wizard who sent the medicine, and the itinerary was right. However, what makes Nick Fury uncomfortable is that he knows who did it, but he can't say it. How to say it? Should I tell Mr. President that this was all done by a bored Avenger who came to travel? The reason for doing this is probably because the other party is bored to death, or it is revenge for such a trivial matter as you not allowing him to go to the toilet in the White House. Nick Fury couldn't say this. The most important thing is that SHIELD, as the place that specializes in such things, has not found the identity of the wizard until now. This also made Nick Fury unable to say this speculation. The more he thought about it, the more aggrieved Nick Fury felt, and he slapped the steering wheel of the car hard. Well, although he was very angry, he still had to go to get scolded. For some reason, Nick Fury always had the mentality of being wronged and doing something wrong, and was going to the teacher's office to be scolded. In his grievance, there was a little fear and impatience. Chapter 186. The attacked Black Salted Egg and the wanted captain and widow. While Nick Fury was driving to the president's vacation place with frustration and anger, a truck suddenly rushed out from the side of Nick Fury and hit Nick Fury's car. Fortunately, Nick Fury's car was modified to be completely different from the original car except for the shell and interior, so he escaped the tragedy of being hit into an iron rod. But even so, the huge impact force made Nick Fury fall into a short coma. The amazing thing is that Nick Fury's last thought, before he fell into a coma was, "Damn, I don't have to be bitten this time." Exclamation mark. Although Black Braised Egg was already in a coma, the attackers would not let Black Braised Egg go. Seeing that the car accident did not seem to cause much damage to Black Braised Egg, they immediately did not hide it. They took out their guns and started shooting at Black Braised Egg's car. Fortunately, Black Braised Egg's car was modified so that his mother could not recognize it, and the bulletproof effect was naturally awesome. Nick Fury woke up slowly with the sound of bullets hitting bulletproof materials. After seeing the surrounding situation clearly, a bold idea suddenly emerged in Nick Fury's mind. It can only be said that this agent chief is indeed a ruthless person. He did not hesitate at the moment of making a decision. Enduring the severe pain, giving up the potion produced by Sherlock in his arms, Nick Fury began to organize a counterattack according to his own ideas. On this side, Nick Fury was carrying out a plan of faking his death to lure the snake out of the hole according to his plan, while Sherlock's life on the other side can be said to be unusually dull. Sherlock had no idea what Black Sauce Egg was experiencing at this time. Otherwise, Sherlock could almost tell at a glance that this was the plot of Captain America 2, and Sherlock, who was already idle at home, had to participate in it. But unfortunately, Sherlock didn't know. As for how Sherlock found out that something was wrong, it has to be said that a few days after the attack on Black Sauce Egg, Sherlock, after a few days of eating, sleeping, and teasing Lalita, made himself despised by people, and then he wanted to make a phone call to have fun. Sherlock then found out that the Captain and Black Widow's phone calls could not be reached at all. When he called Hawkeye to ask for information, Sherlock knew that Hawkeye was on vacation again. And this time, he took his wife and children to a private cabin deep in the forest and lived a life of sunrise and sunset. The only electronic product was a black and white screen Nokia that could only make calls. Sherlock could only make a 6 with one hand for Hawkeye's peculiar hobby, and he didn't know what to say. In the face of Sherlock's inquiry, Hawkeye's mentor was very open and told Sherlock that he estimated that the two were carrying out some mission. Generally speaking, it is not allowed to make external contacts during top secret missions. After hearing Hawkeye's words, Sherlock put his heart in his stomach and began to harass Tony. But Tony was too busy, either playing with armor, enforcing justice, or working with pepper pots in the company. Sherlock could only run to Tony to play a few times, but of course there were changes. The only change was probably that under Sherlock's influence, he changed from fighting alone to wearing armor and taking a group of unmanned armor to enforce justice. As for when Sherlock found out that something was wrong, it has to be mentioned that a few days later, when Sherlock was eating breakfast and watching the wanted photos of Captain and Black Widow on the morning news, he was shocked. There was not much on TV, not even the names of Captain and Black Widow, but it was said that if you saw these two people, call the police immediately. Even if Sherlock was stupid, he knew that this was a wanted order for Captain and Black Widow. And when have these two devils been wanted? Only in Captain America 2. In other words, the plot has been more than halfway through, and Sherlock didn't even know it. What made Sherlock most uncomfortable was that, even if he wanted to participate, he had no way to do it. God knew what the Captain and Black Widow were doing now. Sherlock didn't even know the location of Dr. Zola's training base in the plot. He couldn't really go to the Trident building, the headquarters of the SHIELD, to wait there, right? Sherlock beat his chest and stamped his feet, regretting that he had missed such a big fun. On the other side, Tony's phone call directly called Sherlock's mobile phone. As soon as the call was connected, Tony's suppressed angry voice came out from the receiver of the phone. "Smelly boy, have you watched TV? Old Popsicle and Natasha are wanted. There must be some misunderstanding here. They both need our help." Listening to Tony trying to suppress his anger and talking to himself on the phone, Sherlock could only sigh helplessly. "Come on, my dear Uncle Tony, can you contact them or find them directly?" Hearing Sherlock's complaints, Tony was silent because just as Sherlock said, Jarvis really couldn't find the two people who wanted to hide. But Tony soon regained his confidence and said to Sherlock, "Even if that's the case, we have to do our best to help our friends." Listening to Tony's solemn words, Sherlock frowned fiercely. To be honest, before everything was settled, Sherlock didn't want Tony to get involved in this mess. After all, Hydra is like a toad practicing the star-absorbing technique. It's disgusting if you can't get rid of it. It's okay for me to participate, but for a real name hero like Tony, it's hard to say what the crazy Hydra can do. After thinking for a long time, Sherlock could only tell Tony everything he knew about the SHIELD, trying to keep Tony away from this muddy water. You know what? It would be better if Sherlock didn't say it. When Sherlock told him everything he knew, Tony thought a lot of things thoroughly in an instant. Son of BXXXH. No wonder you never like to contact people from SHIELD and always like to avoid them. You knew it a long time ago. Damn it, why didn't you say it? Facing Tony's inquiry, Sherlock on the other end of the phone rolled his eyes helplessly, his tone full of despair. "I want to say it, but how many people will believe it if I say it?" After hearing Sherlock's words, Tony was silent for a while. That's right, even if he said it, it is estimated that few people would believe Sherlock's words, and it might even provoke Hydra's revenge. Tony, who had figured it out, could only sigh helplessly in the end, and said unwillingly, "Okay, you are right, but are we just going to watch it like this?" Facing Tony's unwillingness, Sherlock didn't care and answered openly, "Of course not. You can openly smooth over the relationship between Captain and Black Widow to the greatest extent possible. Don't tell me that your identity as Tony the Big Shit can't even solve the police calls from ordinary people." Chapter 187 Captain of Mercury Retrograde. Sherlock was discussing with Tony how to find the captain and help him. The captain on the other side was not feeling too good either. After all, compared to the original plot, this time it can be said to be a hellish script with the participation of all people. Even the old school captain began to wonder if he had Mercury retrograde recently. First, he caught a cold and had a fever for no reason. After being a quality captain for 2 days, he finally recovered from the illness, but found the seriously injured black salted egg in his home. After handing himself a USB flash drive, he was inexplicably attacked by a guy with a metal arm. Fortunately, there was Sherlock's potion, which saved the black salted egg from the ending of being killed on the spot. But even if he didn't die on the spot, the black salted egg was seriously injured and was sent to the hospital by the captain and the Black Widow and was taken over by Hill. Not long after the two left, the hospital spread the news that the black salted egg had ascended to heaven. After finally going to the headquarters of SHIELD and wanting to resign, he was inexplicably wanted, and he was also attacked. Let's do it, and do it in the elevator. To be honest, if it weren't for the energy absorbing properties of vibranium, the captain would have been injured, even if he wasn't disabled after his shocking leap on the Trident building. How could he stand up after being confused for a while? After finally breaking out of the encirclement of the dragnet and meeting Black Widow, he met Dr. Zala, the chief doctor under his old rival Red Skull, in his former training base. Although Dr. Zola can no longer be called a person, what Dr. Zola revealed was enough to shock the captain. Is it really what he said when he was the quality captain? He slept for more than 70 years and finally woke up. Not only did he say that his boss was a black man, but now he told me that the old rival Hydra was behind the black man. If he didn't shout "Hail Hydra" after carrying out so many missions for SHIELD, wouldn't it be a bit hard to get over it now? However, before the captain could recover from these things, he encountered an explosion. He finally relied on his shield to take Black Widow away from the damage of the explosion. Just after coming out, he found that he was not only wanted by SHIELD, no, Hydra, but Hydra also used SHIELD's powerful resources to comprehensively want himself and Black Widow in society. This also led to the fact that he and Black Widow could not take any public transportation, nor could they show up in crowded places. Even when they were resting, they had to look for unmanned bridge holes. In short, it was very miserable. This is because Black Widow has been on missions outside for many years and has a good skill in stealing cars. Otherwise, it is estimated that the two would be even more miserable. If they want to move long distances, they either have to steal trains or walk on their legs. Of course, even if it is so miserable, the captain did not think of asking for help. It may be because the captain's potion can magnify people's personality. The captain has liked to fight things by himself since he was a child. Whether facing bullying or enemies, the captain is used to fighting by himself. Even this habit has become more and more of his habit after becoming Captain America. Every time on the battlefield, he rushes to the front and the most dangerous work is carried out by the captain himself. The long-standing habit has led to the captain not being used to asking for help, especially for people he is familiar with. The captain subconsciously wants to protect those he is familiar with. If it was Sherlock, when Black Egg came to him, every member of the Avengers would have received Sherlock's call for help. The current situation is that the captain knows that Hydra is hiding in SHIELD. So there is another point. Why did Hydra not take action for so long, but only now took action against Black Egg and himself? What exactly does Hydra want to do? The captain and Black Widow decided to catch a tongue and ask, and the person they were targeting was naturally the agent Sylvette they rescued from the freighter. After all, this guy's level in SHIELD is not low, and the same level in Hydra is not low. The most important thing is that this guy is relatively easy to catch compared to other people. The two who have decided now have only one problem left, that is, they have to get some equipment. After all, the only weapon that can be counted as a weapon for the two of them now is the shield in the captain's hand. Speaking of weapons and equipment, the two of them thought of two extremely unreliable uncles and nephews, one big and one small. It must be said that the two people's extremely abstract weapons and equipment did leave a very deep impression on them. But this time, it is obvious that the uncle and nephew do not need to appear at the same time. After all, strictly speaking, the only one who needs equipment is Black Widow, and there happens to be a place with a full set of weapons and equipment that Black Widow needs, and even the captain can be armed more comprehensively. Sherlock's gun shop. Maybe the captain has a little psychological shadow on Sherlock. Facing Black Widow's proposal, the captain refused without hesitation. In the end, under Black Widow's argument, the captain can only agree to Black Widow's request, but the captain is not without his own little temper. It's okay to go to Sherlock to get the equipment. Anyway, they are not far away from where Sherlock is now, but there is one thing, never let Sherlock know. The captain is really afraid that Sherlock, the little bastard, will give him a little strength. Faced with the captain's serious request, Black Widow recalled her several meetings with Sherlock and agreed to the captain's proposal without hesitation. The two unanimously decided not to shoot guns, but to quietly enter the village, take the equipment and run away. With an action plan, the two quickly formulated an action plan. The plan was very simple. When it was late at night, the two would sneak into Sherlock's gun shop. The captain was responsible for searching for weapons and ammunition in the store, while Black Widow quietly sneaked into the base of the Red House behind to steal a set of special equipment for Black Widow. Then the two gathered at the west side of the training ground climbed over the wall of the training ground, and quickly found a car that was eye-catching, and left here to Washington to catch Sylvette. The plan was undoubtedly good, strict, and precise. But both of them ignored how dog Sherlock was. At the beginning of the crossing, because he didn't have much sense of security, he had already installed warning devices all over his training ground, and habitually turned them on every night. Moreover, all the alarm horns, lights, and master controls are in a secret space in Sherlock's bedroom. In other words, no one knows except Sherlock. The most important thing is that after Tony's upgrade, Sherlock can't know, even if a fly flies in, let alone Captain America and Black Widow who want to sneak in. Chapter 188 Sherlock's Ordinary Day. Of course, Sherlock didn't know that the Captain and the Black Sister were resting not far from his training ground at this moment, planning to come here to collect autumn wind in the evening. For Sherlock, the daytime is not much different from his usual daily life. When he got up in the morning, he first worried about the Captain and the Black Sister. While worrying, Sherlock did not forget to go to the kitchen to get a piece of toast and spread some jam, just as breakfast. Of course, all the worries disappeared when Sherlock finished breakfast and picked up the fish food towards the fish pond dug by Tony. After all, even if he was worried, Sherlock couldn't find the traces of the Captain and the Black Sister now. Instead of worrying, it's better to live his own life. With such an RQ thought, Sherlock went to feed the fish happily. After all, this will be the main source of food for himself, his family and Tony, and he must take good care of it. No one can refuse the deliciousness of yellow eels, and Sherlock even wants to introduce some hairy crabs to the puddle. You really don't say it. The more Sherlock thought about it, the more tears flowed down his mouth. After all, you can't buy river crabs in the United States. After feeding the fish, Sherlock usually stood by the pond and muttered something like "grow up quickly," and then took a full set of fishing equipment to the training puddle to cast a few rods. Now Sherlock has evolved and is no longer the irritable fisherman, because Sherlock has found new fun. After throwing the fish hook into the water, Sherlock would sit on the chair and smile at the students, who fell into the mud from time to time under his insults. Then from time to time, he would take out a bottle of ice cola, put a little wolfberry in it, and happily take a few sips, and then receive a lot of angry eyes. After teasing the students who were undergoing swamp training, Sherlock would occasionally take care of the students who were undergoing interrogation training, that is, the group of students who were locked in the water prison to survive. The specific operation is to take out a sliced watermelon from the refrigerator you carry with you, facing their murderous gazes, and then happily put it into your mouth, with the juice splashing everywhere. As for fishing, what kind of fish? Didn't you see that Sherlock didn't even put out the bait? The main point is to fish like giant agong, and those who are willing will take the bait. What? Sherlock is so excessive. Why don't students not train seriously and try every means to get a Sherlock? Do you want to ask the AK with Hello Kitty printed on it in mind his hand standing aside? You know, it is really filled with 7.62mm full power bullets. What? You are not afraid of bullets with a bulletproof vest? Then do you want to take a look at the nearly 2-meter tall Unit 2 standing behind Mindy? Do you think that the not so sturdy hydraulic arm can easily break your old waist and perform a scientific experiment of how many times can a person be folded for you? Well, even if neither of them is afraid, you have to know that Sherlock still has the supreme control over the refrigerator that everyone loves. This thing is more useful than holding the handle of the students. What? How can the refrigerator be so popular with the Black Widows? Well, the last contestant who wanted to tease the Black Widow has become a eunuch and dropped out of school permanently. In the eyes of those students, the Black Widows and Tigers are not much different. How can they compare to the refrigerator that burns thousands of miles? After having fun and receiving a large number of looks that can kill him thousands of times, when it is close to noon, Sherlock will clean up and go home to the kitchen to make 5 dishes and a soup, and then call his uncles and to lull us back to eat. With the help of magic, Sherlock can cook very quickly. The main reason for the speed limit is that there are only 5 stoves. Otherwise, even if it is a full banquet, Sherlock can guarantee that it will be completed in 1 hour. Of course, the premise is that Sherlock knows the recipe. After dinner, Sherlock would drag a recliner and randomly find a shade next to the training ground, and then take a comfortable nap amid the roars of the students full of male hormones. After waking up, he would fan himself with a palm leaf fan to tease the Tulalita girls. In Minder's case, it was just a rubbing of the head to make him grow taller, and in Lorna's case, it was a replica of LIU Crossing's I Want to Die This Thing Green. The usual result was that Sherlock was chased madly by the Tulalita girls with guns in their hands while laughing arrogantly. Of course, Sherlock's behavior, which was not much different from eating watermelon in front of the freshmen in military training, would naturally be complained by the students. But usually no one would pay attention to such complaints. Even the most serious Price would not pay attention to such complaints, and he would even say it after there were too many such complaints. Whoever can withstand the pursuit of the Tulalita girls like Sherlock can be as arrogant as Sherlock. It doesn't even take as long as Sherlock, just 10 minutes, any equipment, and you can deal with Sherlock at will if he doesn't die after 10 minutes. The trainees who heard the news were all stunned for a moment. After carefully recalling the crazy actions of the two violent lollies, everyone shuddered and gave up the idea of continuing to complain. After teasing the two lollies, Sherlock would clean up and have a simple dinner. After eating with the two lollies, he would watch TV for a while and then turn on the alarm as usual and then go to bed peacefully. As for the emergency assemblies and other training at night, it was not the turn of the two lollies, so the three of them usually went to bed very early. What? Why didn't Sherlock go to the women's training camp over there with Black Widow to make fun of him? God, those who can ask this question are all soldiers. You must know that your aunt is still your aunt. The aunt in China can only introduce you to a date at most. The aunt in a foreign country wants to date you in person. Don't ask Sherlock how he knew it. Anyway, Sherlock swore that he would never set foot there in his life. This is a very ordinary day for Sherlock, but what Sherlock didn't expect was that such an ordinary day would become not so ordinary after entering the night, and even a little exciting. Just after Sherlock finished watching the daily show of the American looking for his father, not long after Mimi fell asleep, Sherlock was awakened by a violent vibration. This was the alarm set by Sherlock. Once there is an intruder, Sherlock's bed will vibrate to ensure that Sherlock is awake and silently in a dark or low light environment. Sherlock was still a little confused when he was awakened, and he looked at the TV in the room in a daze. According to Tony's setting, once an intruder is found, information will appear on Sherlock's TV. Looking at the picture of man and the woman who are sneaking around in the infographics on the TV, Sherlock began to get excited. After all, when Sherlock first crossed over, he didn't know what his family was like. Later, Sherlock discovered that his gun store itself was a place that was rarely bought for free in the United States. In addition, his business is registered in many places, and there are even many gangsters who look at him respectfully when he walks on the street, so he doesn't have to worry about being stolen. This was the first time Sherlock had seen someone illegally visiting his store since he traveled through time. How could Sherlock not be excited? You know, Sherlock had never found anyone to experiment with memory magic like Oblivion. Now the material was here, right? Chapter 189 The Captain and the Black Widow caught in the act. According to the reminder on TV, Sherlock simply guessed that this was a couple of thieves, but it was bad luck for you to fall into my hands. Looking at the infrared image of the woman who seemed to be sneaking towards the training ground behind, Sherlock thought for a while, and then with a sly smile on his face, he casually ordered, "Red Queen, start Lancelot and catch the female thief. Remember to catch her alive. Don't cripple her. Just knock her out. Start Unit 01 and Unit 02, and pay attention to protecting Mindy and Lorna." "Okay, sir." Red Queen is the intelligent program Tony gave to Sherlock. It is not comparable to Jarvis or Friday in the future. You can simply understand it as a large chatbot that can only complete a few simple commands. Sherlock named this intelligent program the Red Queen out of a bit of Umbrella's bad taste. After dealing with the female thief who sneaked towards the training ground, the only one left was the male thief who was still shopping in the gun store with a bag. Sherlock excitedly took out his magic wand and prepared to go downstairs carefully. Even when he opened the bedroom door, Sherlock had already thought about what combo he should use to make the thief feel desperate. But what Sherlock didn't expect was that he had just opened the bedroom door and saw two small figures quietly sticking to the corridor and trying to go downstairs. The two figures were less than 1.4 meters tall. One of them was holding a purple Axe series rifle with Hello Kitty printed on it. The 100-round drum magazine showed that this gun was definitely not something to be messed with. The other green-haired figure was even more excessive. A pink pineapple M249 was held by a small figure, as if he was holding a huge toy, full of contrast. The two people were none other than Mindy and Lorna, two little Lalita who had gone completely crooked. Seeing the two sneaking downstairs, Sherlock could guess what they were going to do, even if he was on his heels. However, Sherlock couldn't figure out how the two girls knew there was someone downstairs. With a flying curse, the two girls were brought to Sherlock like kittens with fate, caught by the scruff of the neck. "What are you two going to do? Why don't you go back to bed?" Hearing Sherlock's words, Mindy rolled her eyes in annoyance and complained to Sherlock in a low voice. "Don't think we don't know what you are going to do. There is an intruder downstairs. Of course we have to deal with the intruder." Hearing Mindy's words, Sherlock's blood pressure rose. Looking at the indignant little girl Mindy in front of him fiercely, Sherlock rolled his eyes helplessly. "Stop talking nonsense. Even if there is an intruder, it is not your place to deal with it. Go back to the house quickly. Unit 01 and Unit 02 will protect you too." Listening to Sherlock's words, Mindy did not seem to admit defeat and wanted to open her mouth to refute, but was stopped by the calm Lorna. At this time, Lorna looked like a 3-no girl. She calmly stopped Mindy and said to Sherlock opposite calmly, "Okay, let's go back. I hope that someone can handle the things downstairs so that it won't be like a guy's trip to the Middle East, leaving a big hidden danger, causing two underage girls to have to help someone clean up their mess." Listening to Lorna's calm and sarcastic tone, Sherlock swore that his blood pressure had never been so high before. His expression kept changing. After a while, Sherlock finally sighed and said, "Okay, you win, but you have to promise me that you will stand behind me and listen to my instructions." After hearing Sherlock finally give in, the two girls showed excitement on their faces, and even their eyes began to flash with excitement. Seeing the two girls nodding excitedly and looking at the equipment in their hands, Sherlock sighed again. His two girls were really crooked. Whose girl had such a cute face, but what she held in her hands was not a doll, but a gun filled with hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Sherlock took the two girls to the corridor carefully. When they were only one door away from the gun shop downstairs, Sherlock suddenly turned around and looked at the two girls behind him, as if he remembered something. "That's not right. How did you two know that there was an intruder downstairs?" Seeing that Sherlock seemed to have reacted, the two girls' eyes began to wander around, but they didn't look at Sherlock, nor did they want to answer Sherlock's questions. Seeing that the two little girls were obviously up to something, Sherlock's expression gradually became ferocious, and he fiercely showed the magic wand in his hand and said, "Answer quickly. Believe me, I definitely have more than 10 ways to make you tell the truth. Telling it yourself is definitely the easiest way." Seeing that it seemed that they could not fool them anymore, the two little girls finally explained the whole story. When Tony was upgrading Sherlock's training ground, while Sherlock was not paying attention, the two little girls found Tony acting cute and coquettish. In the end, they successfully obtained the highest control authority of Unit 01 and Unit 02. In other words, in controlling Unit 01 and Unit 02, if the two little girls disagree, even Sherlock cannot control them. And I don't know if it's out of some bad taste or Tony has already started to have a daughter slave disease. In the entire training grounds intelligence system, Unit 01 and Unit 02 have higher authority than the Red Queen, the master control intelligence of the training ground. In other words, in all the intelligence systems of the training ground, the authority of the two little girls is higher than Sherlock. Of course, Tony also had a trick up his sleeve. The two girls were absolutely not allowed to set foot on the shooting range, where the refrigerator was burning. Even if they approached there, they would temporarily lose all their permissions, and would be notified to their parents or Unit 01 and Unit 02. All permissions would not be restored until the two girls left the shooting range. This was written in the underlying framework. Unless the entire intelligence system was scrapped, even Tony could not change it. After hearing the explanations of the two girls, Sherlock was stunned for a long time before he reacted. He began to curse Tony. He was indeed a daughter slave who could say he loved her 3,000 times. Now her mother had already taken shape. Of course, although he kept muttering, his hands were not slow at all. After the two girls were ready, Sherlock shouted, "FBI, open this door." Then he kicked the door and rushed out with his two crooked girls. The captain, who was constantly putting bullets into the bag at the bar, knew he was exposed when he heard the FBI coming out. At that time, the captain had only one thought in his mind: oh no, it's over. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Sherlock's Exposed. To be honest, after the captain heard Sherlock's meaningless roar, his first reaction was to resist. He didn't expect to kill him, but at least he could give Sherlock the illusion that he was just an ordinary gangster who came to rob. But soon, the captain gave up this idea. The reason was very simple. Seeing the big and small figures rushing out, as a player who had lived in Sherlock's house, the captain certainly knew who these people were. It must be Sherlock and the two little girls in his house. The captain would not feel guilty about hurting Sherlock. After all, Sherlock had done a lot of bad things, but if he hurt those two little angels, the captain would probably never forgive himself in this life. What's more, after seeing the weapons in the hands of the three people, the captain gave up the idea of resistance. You know, in order to conceal his identity, he didn't even bring his iconic round shield. Which good person can withstand the 7.62mm caliber 100 round drum full power bullet and nearly 200 rounds of 5.56mm NATO bullets? What's more, there was a magic wand pointed at him, and the tip of the magic wand was flashing a dangerous red light. You know, I've only seen this thing on wizards. Wait a minute. Wizard? Magic wand? Question mark? It's in Sherlock's hand? Fuck. Sherlock, you old bastard. You fooled everyone. Fuck. Before the captain could finish his thoughts, he was instantly hit by a red light. In an instant, even the captain's physical fitness at the peak of human body could not resist Sherlock's magic power that was almost like a rule, and he fell straight to the ground. With the help of the magic light, Sherlock didn't see who was on the opposite side, but he could vaguely see that the guy on the opposite side was very strong. Even in the process of turning on the light, Sherlock was thinking about the stunning figure. One thing has to be admitted, that moderate fitness can attract the opposite sex, but the figure of the male thief can only be an example of excessive fitness to attract the same sex. Of course, when Sherlock turned on the lights, the two girls were not idle either. Lona's M249 was always pointed at the figure lying on the ground, while Mindy ran excitedly behind the counter to find an unusually thick iron chain. After all, according to the strength of the figure lying on the ground, Mindy was a little worried that ordinary ropes could not tie this guy up. But all of this turned into a strong surprise the moment Sherlock turned on the lights in the store. Fuck. Captain question mark quote asterisk 3. The three of them almost shouted out the identity of the person lying straight on the ground in unison. And what can the captain do? He can only stare at Sherlock holding the magic wand with resentful eyes. After all, the captain can't move anything except his eyes. Following the captain's line of sight, Sherlock also found the magic wand in his hand. Looking at the captain's eyes, that were 7 parts aggrieved, 2 parts resentful, and 1 part puzzled, like a fan-shaped diagram, Sherlock knew that he had failed, even if he was stupid. Damn it, who would have thought that he would be so careless and strange to be exposed? Sherlock casually removed the magic on the captain, and looked at the captain, who slowly stood up, scratching his head, and said with a smile, "Captain, if I say that I'm learning how to use magic from a wizard, do you believe it?" Seeing that Sherlock seemed to want to struggle, thinking about the suffering he had suffered because of the wizard and Sherlock, the captain sneered and spoke. "Haha, do you think I believe it or not?" After listening to the captain's words, Sherlock shrugged his shoulders and said, Okay, I guess you believe it. Giant Sherlock answered, and the captain stared at Sherlock standing near the switch with an unbelievable look, as if wondering how there could be someone in the world with a face as thick as a city wall. Just when the captain wanted to say something, the door leading to the training ground at the back was suddenly opened. The captain's subconscious reaction was that Black Widow was back, and he shouted out quickly, "Natasha, don't." The captain just called out a name, and the rest of the words were stuck in his throat. The reason is very simple. The one who came in was not Natasha as he thought, but a white mecha mixed with a small amount of gold, full of Japanese comics. And the Natasha he had been thinking about, that is, Black Widow, was being dragged into the house like a dead dog by this mecha that looked difficult to mess with. Black Widow was limp all over, and it was unknown whether she was dead or fainted. Anyway, she had lost all perception of the outside world. Seeing this scene, the captain's grief and anger became more intense. What did they think at the beginning? They had to run to Sherlock to find equipment? If they changed places, they would not be wiped out like this. He knew that Sherlock was a little outrageous, but he didn't expect that Sherlock was even more outrageous. Even the people around Sherlock were extremely outrageous. God knows why the little girl who used to be so soft and kept calling Captain in front of him now holds a pink M249 machine gun. The key is that she looks very skilled. The other one is even more outrageous. Ak. That's a Russian Ak. Ak is fine, but are you serious about such a big drum? Damn, the group of Germans I faced back then were not as outrageous as you. Seeing that the captain's blood pressure seemed to rise, and even his breathing began to become rapid, Sherlock didn't know how to react. Sherlock was also very aggrieved. He originally just wanted to catch a blind thief to experiment with magic. God knows which innocent captain would play the role of a thief. The most important thing is that the old spy Black Widow, who has always been very reliable, actually agreed to do such an outrageous thing with the captain. Sherlock was also speechless. Seeing that the captain seemed to be in a bad mood, Sherlock thought for a while, raised his wand and fainted on the ground. Since you don't know what to do, you might as well go to sleep first. How does the saying go? Although running away is shameful, it is very useful, isn't it? Looking at the Black Widow who was knocked unconscious on the ground, Sherlock, who had figured it out, shot her again without hesitation, and knocked her unconscious. Then, facing the contemptuous eyes of the two little girls, he used the floating spell to control the two unconscious people and began to urge the two little girls to go back to sleep quickly. After all, children who don't sleep will not grow tall. As for Black Widow and the captain, well, Sherlock's house has quite a few guest rooms. Because the captain occupied his room, Sherlock took advantage of the expansion of the training ground to naturally expand his own house a little. Anyway, it is no problem to squeeze in the captain and Black Widow. If there is anything, we can talk about it tomorrow. Chapter 191 Captain Brand Mattress. At the top of the sun the next day, Black Widow, driven by the instinct of a veteran spy, regained consciousness before the captain. But even though Black Widow regained consciousness, she didn't want to open her eyes at all due to human instinct, commonly known as staying in bed. The reason was simple. She had slept so comfortably last night. How long had it been since she slept so peacefully and comfortably? When was the last time she slept so comfortably? Was it when she came to the United States with her adoptive parents as a child? Or before entering the Red House? Black Widow herself couldn't remember. After all, the first lesson in the Red House was about sleeping. In the words of the instructor at the time, sleeping is a human instinct, but it is the most dangerous time for Black Widows. Over the years, Black Widow herself has become accustomed to waking up quickly at the slightest sign of trouble, even when she is on vacation. Because of this, when Sherlock fainted, Black Widow experienced a wave of deep sleep that she had never experienced before, and she was fascinated by this feeling. If I have to say something I'm not satisfied with, it might be this mattress. Why does it feel uneven? Also, this pillow is very soft and elastic, but why is there a gap in the middle? It feels like a butt. Who would buy such a pillow? Wait. But, at this moment, Black Widow's instinct as a spy for many years immediately came online, prompting Black Widow to open her eyes quickly. Well, a strange ceiling Under the stimulation of many parties, Black Widow sat up at once and looked at the surrounding environment vigilantly. This is an empty room. There is no furniture in the whole room. Except for the hard decoration such as windows, floors and walls, there is nothing at all. As for the uneven mattress and the pillow with a gap that Black Widow felt at the beginning, just as Black Widow thought, it was not a mattress and pillow at all, but our poor captain. This is a small privilege of Sherlock. After all, Black Widow is a woman. As a man, Sherlock still subconsciously gave Black Widow a little preferential treatment. As for whether the captain would object, Sherlock said, "I'm an old unlucky guy. It doesn't matter." As for why the expanded room is so empty, it's actually very simple, because it's not used. Although the room has been expanded and decorated, when it comes to purchasing furniture, both Sherlock and the Talalita found one thing. That is, there are not many people who will come to live here, and everyone is very busy every day, so naturally they forget to decorate this room. To be honest, if the captain and Black Widow hadn't visited yesterday, Sherlock would have almost forgotten that he had expanded such a room. Black Widow sat on the mat wearing captain for a while, and the memory of last night slowly emerged in Black Widow's head. At the beginning, everything was perfect. With the means of many years of old spies, she easily opened the door of Sherlock's gun shop with her hairpin. No alarm was raised, no one found out. Everything was so perfect and normal. Although they noticed that there was a flashing red camera on each corner of the store, to be honest, neither the captain nor the Black Widow cared about it. They even thought of the bad things Sherlock had done before, and they waved their hands at the camera arrogantly. After all, it can't be that you are the only one who can cheat us, but we can't cheat you, right? It's dead early in the morning. The idea that only the officials can set fires and the people can't light lamps is no longer popular. Exclamation mark. Seeing that there were no alarms or other messes, the captain and the Black Widow smiled at each other and started to act according to the original plan. The captain collected weapons and ammunition here, and the Black Widow went to the training ground tower behind to get a set of Black Widow equipment. But what neither of them expected was that Sherlock, the sixth, didn't press the alarm in the store at all, but put it in his room instead. The unlucky Black Widow was happily touching the tower when Sherlock Smetcher brought justice to her and knocked her out with a punch. To be honest, Black Widow didn't react at the time. It can only be said that from Black Widow's perspective, she was happily touching the tower, but the next second she heard a crisp sound of her head colliding with metal. Then she didn't know anything. The last consciousness before fainting was, damn, just listening to the sound must be a good head. After figuring out what happened last night, combined with the current situation, Black Widow knew one thing. Even if she was stupid, she and the captain must have overturned last night. Although she didn't know where she and the captain overturned, it must have overturned, and it was the kind of overturn that was captured alive. The more Black Widow thought about it, the more outrageous it felt. Her identity as an old spy for many years had no face at all in front of Sherlock, the bear kid. Black Widow was still doubting her life here, and the captain, who had been used as a mattress, finally woke up. Unlike Black Widow's doubt about life, the captain was much calmer. After all, the stimulation last night was big enough. The captain who woke up was still relatively calm, but he was not feeling well. There was no place on her body that was not uncomfortable, but it was understandable. After all, it was a mattress for a whole night, and it was the kind of mattress that came with a pillow. Natasha, if possible, can you get off me first? It's a little numb. The captain felt the weight on his back and said a little embarrassedly. Hearing the captain's voice, Black Widow blushed, but Black Widow concealed it very well and quickly got up to help the captain who was lying on the ground. When the captain stood up, Black Widow had returned to her normal appearance, and there was no sign that she was still ashamed of her overturning. The two looked at each other and saw a kind of helplessness in each other's eyes, a kind of helplessness of being controlled by a naughty child. To the two sighed together. After sighing, the captain also recovered and led Black Widow to the door. After all, the captain had lived here before, and compared to Black Widow who came here for the first time, he was familiar with the place. But what the captain and Black Widow didn't expect was that when they opened the door and came to the living room, they saw a scene that completely made Black Widow throw away her reserve as an old spy. Pointing at Sherlock in the kitchen, She patted the captain's shoulder hard, her eyes darting back and forth between the captain and Sherlock, and she shouted with unclear meanings. Team, 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 captain, he, me. Chapter 192. Tony watching the fun. The reason why Black Widow was so incoherent was that she saw Sherlock cooking at this time. Of course, it was not ordinary cooking, but cooking with multi-threaded operations, while waving the magic wand. There were a lot more people at noon today than usual, so Sherlock naturally had to prepare more. So Black Widow saw this scene. Sherlock had already been rotten. After all, he had been exposed yesterday, and Sherlock was too lazy to pretend again. Of course, the main reason was that the shield was about to be finished. Even if Black Egg knew it, he couldn't bother him anymore. Otherwise Sherlock would let the captain feel the charm of oblivion. Looking at the somewhat excited Black Widow beside him, the captain was very calm. After all, he had seen it last night, and the captain understood Black Widow's reaction at this time. After all, they all worked in S.H.I.E.L.D. When solving the Red Room, Sherlock deceived everyone with his hand of appearing at the same time with the wizard. The captain could think about it with his heels. Black Widow must have reported to Black Egg after returning, indicating that Sherlock and the wizard could appear at the same time, and they were definitely not the same person. And now, watching Sherlock holding the wizard's wand, calmly using magic to cook in front of her, it would be a miracle if she could remain calm. No one could remain calm, especially Black Widow, who was an old spy. This was not much different from getting a piece of intelligence with great difficulty, only to find out that it was false intelligence. Helplessly patting the excited Black Widow's shoulder, the captain sighed. Calm down, I understand you. This bastard deceived all of us. Hearing the captain's voice, Black Widow gradually calmed down, but her heart was still churning. Now Black Widow completely understood the captain's feelings about Sherlock. Nemesis. Pure nemesis. It feels that anything related to this bastard named Sherlock is either a failure or an increase in intensity. Of course, Sherlock didn't know Black Widow's inner drama, but Sherlock heard every word of the captain's words. Sherlock turned around calmly, looking at the captain standing not far away with a smile. Captain, I can hear you. As for why I hid my identity, do I need to explain it to you? Maybe Dr. Zola didn't explain it to you clearly and I need to tell you again. It would have been better if Sherlock didn't say anything. As soon as he finished speaking, the captain and Black Widow's bodies quickly tensed up. The captain stared at Sherlock intently, his eyes looking at his shield on the sofa. You knew it from the beginning? Then why didn't you say it? Looking at the two people who were a little nervous, Sherlock chuckled calmly, gestured in the direction of the two people with the wand in his hand, and then continued. Come on, you two can't beat me, even if you tie them together. Captain, you should have known this last night. As for why you didn't say it, stop it, okay. What should I say? Should I use the identity of a wizard to tell all of you that S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually the S.H.I.E.L.D. after the New York War? Or should I use Sherlock's identity to announce that Hydra is in S.H.I.E.L.D. after defeating the Red House? Even if I say it, someone has to believe it. As Sherlock's voice fell, the captain and the Black Sister were all deflated at once. Yes, just like Sherlock said, even if Sherlock said it at that time, they probably wouldn't believe it. Just when the captain wanted to say something, the ceiling was suddenly smashed through by something, and a man in iron armor fell into the living room in an instant. Everyone, including Sherlock, was startled, and the captain immediately took the shield on the sofa. As the smoke and dust dissipated, everyone saw who the person was. Tony Stark. Well, although I called Tony early in the morning to tell him what happened last night, and also explained that I found Black Widow and Captain America and asked Tony to come and have fun. But you can come if you want. Why did you smash through the roof of my house? Tony, big shit. Sherlock resisted the urge to give Tony a bite of a big melon and yelled at Tony with his back teeth. Although Sherlock looked very angry, Tony was very calm. He stood up from the iconic landing action of Iron Man, and then the armor began to split continuously, as if it had thoughts. After a while, Tony's iron armor opened from the front, and Tony, wearing a slim suit, calmly jumped off his iron armor. As Tony left the iron armor, the originally opened place began to heal quickly, and soon it returned to the original appearance of Iron Man. Tony himself looked at his watch very pretentiously and then said to the armor behind him, "I shouldn't be late, right? Ahem. Why is there so much dust? Jarvis, go buy some materials to patch up the hole in the roof." Following Tony's order, the armor that had been restored to its original state waved its hands and flew out through the hole again in an instant. Listening to Tony's pretentious words, Sherlock suppressed his desire to use the restoration, snorted coldly, and turned around to continue his work as a chef. Seeing that his pretense was not so successful, Tony quickly changed the subject. "Hey, old popsicle, you are really not nice. You didn't even think of contacting us when you had something to do, and you actually ran to Sherlock, this bastard, to steal things?" Hearing Tony's words, Black Widow and the captain blushed for a rare moment. Both of them were a little embarrassed, especially the captain, who didn't even care that Tony called him old popsicle. Seeing that both of them were a little embarrassed, Tony decided not to continue the topic and changed the subject to ask what happened. Although Black Sauce Egg told the captain that no one could be trusted at the time, the captain still decided to trust his former comrades, especially Tony, and the captain did not doubt it at all. After all, if Tony was suspected, according to the nature of Hydra, there would probably be steel armor everywhere now. After all, if this thing was mass produced, few countries could withstand the charge of this thing. Therefore, the captain told Tony about the whole thing without hiding anything. Of course, the shield and the man whose name was a taboo word in reverse were the top priority. Tony was stunned by what he heard, and he looked in Sherlock's direction from time to time. No wonder this bastard didn't like shield. Tony estimated that this guy knew about this a long time ago. The captain and Black Widow told Tony about it while waiting for Sherlock. As Sherlock's meal was ready, several people quickly moved the battlefield to the dining table, but soon the captain once again began to regret his behavior last night. The reason is very simple. As Sherlock's meal was ready, Price and the other 5 people and 2 little Lally also came back. Chapter 193. Oh no, Muggles are really learning magic? To be honest, this meal can be said to be the most interesting meal Sherlock has eaten recently. Seeing the captain, who is actually older than Price, being scolded by Price for a long time like a grandson, Sherlock felt very interesting. What? Why didn't the captain resist? Let's not say that the captain is not that kind of person. The most important point is that the captain has trained at the training ground in Sherlock's home. For the captain, Price is actually not much different from a teacher. Fear of teachers is human instinct. Look at the host Zio-san of CCTV. That guy graduated from Peking University. Even if he is placed in the internal, he is one of the pillars. When he encountered questions from the teacher in the program, didn't he still subconsciously dodge his eyes? Therefore, it is understandable that the captain pretended to be a quail in front of Price. Of course, for Sherlock and Tony, who are fun people, this is pure fun. Didn't you see these 2 guys grinning at the table with their big teeth bared? Even the 2 of them directly ignored the warning eyes of Sherlock's 5 uncles and focused wholeheartedly on the fun in front of them. Of course, as the 5 uncles and 2 little girls quickly finished their lunch, Sherlock and Tony's fun quickly disappeared. The captain, who had recovered, looked at the 2 people watching the excitement nearby with a bad look. The uncle and nephew had similar reactions to the captain's glare and simply ignored it. Looking at the captain, who kept glaring at Tony and Sherlock, and then looking at Sherlock and Tony, whose eyes were wandering around and not looking at the captain, Black Widow finally sighed helplessly and sighed, "Men." But soon, Black Widow discovered a little blind spot. That is, Tony was not like the others, and was very surprised that Sherlock was a wizard. And looking at the appearance of the 2, it is very likely that Tony knew from the beginning that the wizard was Sherlock himself, and the most important thing was that this guy had helped Sherlock conceal his identity. Black Widow, who was getting more and more angry, also joined the captain's team, glaring at the 2. Of course, although the 3 men were confused about why Black Widow suddenly got angry, no one cared. The 4 people quarreled for a long time before they calmed down. The captain looked at Sherlock and asked the question he wanted to ask before the dinner started. "Sherlock, how did you know that Hydra was hiding in S.H.I.E.L.D.? It would have been better if the captain didn't ask." When Sherlock asked, he was almost sweating. How did he know? Nonsense. Of course I knew it from watching the movie. Unless the person sitting opposite was Zhao, Sherlock would never dare to tell this answer to the people present. If Sherlock dared to answer like this, the 3 people opposite would dare to force him to go to the mental hospital for a checkup. You have to know that this is the Marvel world. As an American comic, the Arkham Asylum next door with its many talents is well known. Sherlock is even more taboo about Marvel's Asylum. It's better not to get involved if you can. Who knows if there will be some weird brothers who are the kings and dominate there. Under the threat of his life, Sherlock's CPU started to run quickly and gradually overclocked. Finally, within 0.08 seconds, he came up with an extremely safe answer. You should know that I know magic, and there is a kind of magic called prophecy. So it's not surprising that I know some things in advance. After saying this, Sherlock felt guilty. He didn't know prophecy at all. What if it was just a blood talent, and he couldn't learn it at all? Sherlock had tried it when he was learning magic. What if he really had a talent? But the facts told Sherlock that you were overthinking. Sherlock still remembered that he held the so-called prophecy textbook and observed it with a teacup all night, but he didn't see anything. If there is only one prophecy that Sherlock has learned, it is the digital prophecy. But this thing is not so much a prophecy as a probability calculation model, and it is also a very precise concept calculation model. How precise is it? Even parameters such as air humidity, dust density, and the reactions of people around are required. Once you have mastered this, you can easily do things like the movie, where you use a pencil to cause a car accident and kill someone perfectly. But correspondingly, Sherlock even suspected that, even if Jarvis was asked to use it, the computer would crash. Even if he really calculated it, he would probably miss the time specified for the result. But since he had said it, Sherlock would not be scared. Isn't it just a trick? This was not difficult for Sherlock. Sherlock might not be good at prophecy, but he was very good at trickery. Facing the expressions of Captain Black Widow and Tony, "You are bragging," Sherlock rolled his eyes unhappily and pointed with his wand. The originally messy dining table became clean and new in an instant. Then, before everyone could sigh that magic was so magical and convenient, Sherlock threw a pile of books on the table. Those books looked full of time, and they were all very thick. The most exaggerated one was even as big as a bedside table. But the names on the spines were all books about prophecy without exception. After all, Sherlock has a library. Although he can't predict, there are as many books about prophecy as he wants. Seeing these so-called evidence and Sherlock's deception, Captain America and Black Widow actually believed that Sherlock saw in the prophecy that S.H.I.E.L.D. had been occupied by Hydra. The only one who still had some doubts was Tony. After all, they had been together for the longest time, and Tony knew what Sherlock was like. Naturally, he would not believe everything this stinky boy said. However, doubts were doubts. For Tony, who was a thorough scientist, the contents of these magic books were still very curious. Of course, it was not just Tony who was curious. Captain America and Black Widow were also curious. After all, this was their first time to come into contact with books about magic, and they must be genuine books. Everyone would feel curious. After obtaining Sherlock's permission, the 3 of them started to read the contents of the book. But soon, the expressions of the 3 people who were originally expecting turned into the expressions of the subway old man. They knew all the letters in the book, and they also knew the words composed of these letters, but they could not understand a sentence composed of these words. The expressions of the 3 people were almost the same, and quickly changed from the old man on the subway to Wang Baoqiang's what is written on this point gif. Sherlock had expected this a long time ago. Haha, I, a serious wizard, can't understand the content inside. How can you 3 muggles understand it? If the 3 of them understood this, Sherlock swore that he would break his wand on the spot and perform a handstand to eat shit. After all, if a muggle really understood what he, a wizard, couldn't understand, then he really had to quit, pack up and go back to his hometown to grow sweet potatoes, and he could live a few more years. But what Sherlock didn't expect was that just a few minutes later, the expression on Tony's face quickly changed from Baoqiang asking what to a look of surprise, which made Sherlock's heart skip a beat. Oh no, Tony, a muggle, couldn't really figure it out, right? Chapter 194 The Captain and Black Widow. Oh no, am I an idiot? Seeing Tony's expression getting more and more excited, Sherlock was panicking inside, but on the surface he remained calm. The only flaw was that his eyes kept wandering around Tony. The captain knew Sherlock's little thoughts. After all, the captain and Black Widow were already a little overwhelmed. After a while, the two looked up at each other. Just one glance, and the brain circuits of the two were connected in an instant. Damn, is this thing for people to see? I dare not say anything else. If all magic books are like this, it is difficult for the little bastard sitting opposite, who writes Sherlock and reads Unreliable, to really learn magic. The captain and Black Widow looked at each other, and in an instant they understood that the other party had similar ideas to themselves. They sighed helplessly and put down the magic books in their hands at the same time. Just when they wanted to greet Tony, who was also a muggle, to continue the topic about the snake shield, they found something different. At this moment, Tony was looking at the magic book in his hand with a face full of surprise. His expression was full of eagerness to try, and a kind of excitement that was a bit incomprehensible. To be honest, judging from the expression on Tony's face at this moment, the next second, whether Tony took out a pen and a notebook from his arms to start taking notes, or jumped up and grabbed the wand in Sherlock's hand to start casting magic, both Captain and Black Widow said they would not be surprised. However, although they were not surprised, they both felt uncomfortable. You know, both of them are older than Tony, and even the captain, an old guy, is Tony's father in terms of seniority. Now the two of them can't understand what Sherlock's magic book is about, but Tony on the other side actually understands it. This feeling is like being at the table for the New Year's reunion dinner. You and your peers are playing with your mobile phones boredly, waiting for the dishes to be served. Then the elementary school kid from your extremely wealthy relative's family sat at the dinner table, and then casually took out a high-level math book, and read it with great interest, and even started to calculate from time to time. How to describe this feeling? It's not easy to describe. For a moment, Black Widow and the captain even saw a kind of light called a top student flashing on Tony beside them. Similarly, almost in an instant, the two of them also gave their same brain circuits a very vivid name, the tacit understanding of the scumbag. At the same time, an idea came to Black Widow and the captain's heads at the same time. Oh no, isn't this a fool? The most important thing is that being a fool is not terrible. What's terrible is that there is an unreliable little bastard sitting opposite. The captain, who has a little PTSD for Sherlock, even suspected that, as long as Sherlock saw something, he would definitely run to the two of them in the next second and say, "GG, you can't understand it, right?" Then within a week, the entire Avengers and even some fans gossip groups will have exaggerated descriptions of their performance today. It may even get more and more distorted. As for how it will turn out, the captain dare not imagine it. God knows what a kind-hearted man like the captain has encountered with Sherlock to be so wary of Sherlock. Seeing that Sherlock's attention is on Tony at this time, the captain and the Black Sister quickly reached a consensus with just a glance. Fuck. Even if he is pretending, he must pretend, and he must not let Sherlock see any flaws. It's time to test his acting skills. The two quickly set up their postures. At that look, I don't know if they thought they were reading some fascinating classics. The captain and the Black Sister communicated with brainwaves throughout the whole process, which of course would not attract Sherlock's attention. After all, Sherlock's attention was all on Tony at this time. Sherlock even began to constantly comfort himself that it is very likely that Tony only understood it because of his high IQ. After all, he is a person who is known to be cursed by knowledge. Magic is also a kind of knowledge. It's not surprising that Tony understood it, but it's hard to say for the other two. Thinking of this, Sherlock shifted his attention. Just a glance, Sherlock began to feel unwell. Damn, what did he see? Captain and Black Widow had the classic expression of Baoqiang asking something just now, but in a short while, they looked like they saw Jinping Mini. Sherlock even began to doubt whether he really had no talent for prophecy, or whether he was too stupid to learn this prophecy magic. After all, everyone present seemed to understand it. Or should I find some time to study how to plant sweet potatoes? Sherlock, who was visibly panicked, could only use the help of pouring tea to find out what was going on. Sherlock even began to doubt whether he had taken the wrong book. While pouring tea, Sherlock finally saw why Tony had such an expression of "I understand" on his face. Damn it, the book Tony is holding is about digital prophecy. Rather than a magic book, it's more like a math book in the magic world. It's also a math book about probability. Although Sherlock has to admit that the mathematical model of prediction in this book is really exquisite, even so exquisite that it doesn't seem like a product of science. But this book is indeed a math book about probability. Tony may really not understand other things. If this Tony still can't understand it, then he really feels ashamed of his several PhD degrees from MIT. Okay, Tony's problem is solved, so what is the situation on the side of Captain and Black Widow? Sherlock also secretly looked at the books in their hands. One is about tea leaf prophecy, and the other is about crystal ball prophecy. Damn it, Sherlock also studied these two books. To sum up, there is almost no substantial content in these two books, just some messy things. How can Captain and Black Widow read these two things with relish? Sherlock expressed doubt. After thinking for a while, Sherlock decided to take back the magic book from everyone. No matter whether Captain America and Black Widow really understood it, at least Tony couldn't really get in touch with the mathematical model of the prophecy. After all, according to his ability to create Ultron in the future, if he really studied the mathematical model of the prophecy and created a Skynet mastermind, it would be really interesting. Chapter 195, The Love-Hate Relationship Between Iron Man and Winter Soldier, Part 1. Sherlock took the magic books from the three people without any hesitation, but the reactions of the three people were completely different. Captain and Black Widow looked relieved, while Tony, who understood the book in his hand, looked unsatisfied. If it weren't for the dangerous light that had already lit up the wand in Sherlock's hand, Tony would definitely find a way to continue reading the book. After a quarrel, the question of why Sherlock could predict the future was finally over, and the discussion of the four people was back on track. To be honest, if possible, Captain and Black Widow really don't want Sherlock to get involved in this matter. After all, this guy's too much of a mess. Tony's words are okay, but the two don't want Tony to get involved too much. After all, up to now, whether it is SHIELD or SHIELD, it is now a legal and compliant official organization. If you confront it, there will inevitably be a certain backlash. Captain and Black Widow are alone, and it doesn't matter, even Sherlock can avoid such backlash by wearing a wizard's vest. But as an openly identified Iron Man, Tony cannot completely avoid such backlash. God knows what those stupid, bubbling, yet extremely greedy guys will do to Tony's Stark group in this short period of time before they completely defeat Hydra and SHIELD. What's more, Tony himself is SHIELD's technical consultant. They still hope that Tony can take advantage of this period of time to make a break with SHIELD as soon as possible, instead of putting on armor to help. After the two told Tony their ideas, Tony agreed with them after just a moment's consideration and decided not to participate in this incident openly. But in contrast, Tony will provide support in terms of technology and connections. After the few people discussed the next course of action for a while, Captain America and Black Widow unanimously decided to continue their plan at night and set off for Washington. Sherlock naturally didn't care. After all, he had the help of magic, and when to set off was just a portal for Sherlock. After using the pillows on the sofa to make a bunk bed for Black Widow and Captain America, Sherlock pulled Tony, who wanted to leave, to his room as they exclaimed at the convenience of magic. What was Sherlock going to do? Nonsense, of course. He was going to solve the problem between Tony and the Winter Soldier. You have to know that in the future civil war with Captain America, the disagreement between the two parties was just the inducement, and the real reason for the breakup between the two was actually the Winter Soldier. Sherlock was confident that he could solve the discord between the two parties, but regarding the matter of Captain America's good friend Hawkeye, Sherlock really had no good solution. After all, Hawkeye was just a knife for killing people, and the mastermind was still the group of Hydra hidden behind Hawkeye. The reason why Sherlock wanted to find ways to participate in the plot of Captain America 2 was largely to resolve Tony's knot. After all, there was only one chance to face the top leaders of Hydra. After this time, there would be no chance for Tony to vent his evil fire in the future. After half pushing Tony into his room, Sherlock closed his eyes and began to look for what he wanted on the vending machine in his library. That's right, Sherlock wanted to take out the great artifact, the pensieve, and edit his memories for Tony to watch, as a precaution. But when Sherlock really found the pensieve, looking at the price on the vending machine, Sherlock's heart began to twitch. Damn, this is too expensive, isn't it? I have saved up gold for a long time, and this wave can be said to have consumed a small part. Sherlock gritted his teeth and finally bought the pensieve, not for anything else, but just for the harmony of the team in the future. Sherlock had to buy this thing. Damn, this team will fall apart without me, Sherlock. Tony on the other side didn't know Sherlock's in a drama at all. After being pulled into the room by Sherlock, Tony guessed that Sherlock must have something to say to him alone. But after Sherlock entered the room, he closed his eyes with a painful expression and said nothing. Tony was used to it, so he found a chair and sat down carelessly, waiting for Sherlock's performance. After a while, Sherlock turned his wrist, and a shallow basin made of metal with complex patterns appeared in Sherlock's hand. The shallow basin contained some liquid with a density as high as mercury, but unlike mercury, these liquids were transparent. The magical thing was that, even though Sherlock had made a big move just now, the liquid inside seemed to be connected to the shallow basin, and it didn't seem to be affected by gravity at all. Just when Tony was curious about what this thing was, and wanted to ask, Sherlock gently pushed the meditation basin in his hand out. The meditation basin seemed to be dragged by something invisible, floating slowly between the two of them. This scene made Tony, who thought he was knowledgeable, almost reach the peak of his curiosity about this shallow basin. He even stood up and started to circle around the meditation basin. Seeing Tony's extremely excited look, Sherlock almost gritted his teeth and looked at Tony and said, "Damn it, for you, I can say that I have no money at all this time. Tony, you have to give me half a ton of gold as compensation." Tony, who was studying why the meditation bowl could float, didn't care at all. He waved his hand at Sherlock and said nonchalantly, "I'll give you 1 ton. I'll ask Happy to send it to you later." What on earth is this thing? What effect does it have? What does it do? Tony looked as if he had just given out a few cents instead of a ton of gold. Compared with the gold, Tony seemed to care more about the meditation bowl in front of him. Sherlock couldn't hold back when he saw Tony's look. This enviable dog-rich look really made people hate him. FXXK. Dog-rich. Damn capitalist. Sherlock couldn't help but curse, but it was obvious that Tony didn't care. He even smiled unusually happily and arrogantly when he saw Sherlock in pain. But soon, as Sherlock said the next sentence, the smile on Tony's face came to an abrupt end and was replaced by endless anger. Chapter 196, The Love-Hate Relationship Between Iron Man and Winter Soldier, Part 2. Tony, there is one thing I must tell you. There is actually another hidden reason behind your parents' death. I saw it in the prophecy. As Sherlock's voice fell, the smile on Tony's face quickly faded, and the cynical feeling quickly turned into a rage that was almost real. He stared at Sherlock, who was standing on the other side of the pensieve. After a while, Tony gradually controlled his inner anger, but said nothing, staring at Sherlock, as if waiting for Sherlock to continue. Seeing that Tony didn't seem to be as angry as he thought, and didn't look crazy for revenge, Sherlock was relieved. After thinking for a while, he continued, "The thing in front of you is called the pensieve. It has a very simple function. It allows you to see other people's memories. Later, I will share the pictures I see with you through the pensieve, but I hope you will stay calm after watching it and wait until I explain the cause and effect to you before you make a decision." Listening to Sherlock's words, Tony didn't say much and nodded expressionlessly. Sherlock swore that he had never seen Tony like this since he met him. After thinking it over again and again, he could only sigh helplessly. He pressed his magic wand against his temple, and the next second, a memory emitting a milky white light was pulled out by Sherlock. The memory that was pulled out was constantly twisting gently, emitting a milky white light, and it looked like some magical living thing. Sherlock held the memory he had just pulled out, and looked at Tony opposite him. Although Tony still had an expressionless look, Sherlock could clearly see an emotion called disgust in Tony's eyes. Now it was Sherlock's turn to get angry. "What's that look in your eyes?" Tell me, what's that look in your eyes just now? It would have been better if Sherlock didn't say anything. After he finished speaking, Tony's disgusted look became even more unconcealed, and he leaned back. That look was just because Sherlock said that he was keeping Tony hanging with information about his parents. Otherwise, according to Tony's character, he would have stood up and left without any hesitation the next second. Seeing Tony's disgusted but silent look, Sherlock felt that his blood pressure was about to rise, and he shook his memory into the meditation basin in a bad mood. The moment the milky white memory touched the transparent liquid in the meditation basin, the liquid, which even gravity could not make a ripple, began to ripple. Almost in an instant, the milky white memory merged into the transparent liquid, and the next second, ripples arose. Almost in a few breaths, the originally transparent liquid turned milky white and returned to calm. Seeing the meditation basin regained its calm, Tony approached it with some curiosity. Looking at the milky white liquid in the basin, Tony was a little curious for a moment. What should I do next? Tony asked this question with a hint of curiosity, which made him regret for the rest of his life. After Tony asked this question, Sherlock showed a sly smile on his face. Before Tony could react, Sherlock pressed Tony's head into the meditation basin. After a few seconds of free fall, Tony appeared on a tree-lined path. Tony stood up with some lingering fear, and Sherlock's voice came from behind him. This is a picture I saw in the prophecy. Note that this is just a memory. You can't change anything. So no matter what happens next, I hope you can stay rational. Remember, I will always stand by your side. Sherlock stood behind Tony and said to Tony, who had just climbed up, and Tony looked at Sherlock standing beside him and nodded with a complicated expression. After all, Sherlock really knows how to predict, and the memory here is just Sherlock's editing through the movie of his previous life. But even so, when Tony saw the Winter Soldier appear and kill his parents, he was still filled with endless sadness and anger. When Tony came back to his senses, he and Sherlock had returned to Sherlock's bedroom. Everything was still the same, as if the scene they just saw did not exist. Tell me, who is he? My parents can't die in vain. After listening to Tony's words, Sherlock just sighed helplessly and explained to Tony. Winter Soldier, you can also call him Winter Soldier, a warrior created by Hydra during the Cold War specifically for assassination. His real name is Bucky Barnes, a former member of the Howling Commandos and one of Captain America's best friends. During a mission, Bucky fell off the cliff of the Ice Valley. Everyone thought Bucky had died, but he was picked up by Hydra stationed in the Soviet Union. After falling into the deep valley, Dr. Zola brainwashed him and installed a new metal arm for his broken arm. He became an important weapon of Hydra, the Winter Soldier. From then on, Bucky, as a knife of Hydra, began to clear some important people who blocked the way for Hydra. As Sherlock explained, Tony gradually became sluggish. He was not a fool. Based on the information Sherlock had explained so far, Tony had basically guessed what would happen next. Tony looked at Sherlock with a wry smile on his originally unruly face. I understand. If things had gone as planned, and if I had suddenly learned this news, I would have had a lot of fights with the captain, right? And the captain wouldn't have felt good, right? On one side was his childhood friend, and on the other side was his friend and his friend's son. After hearing what Tony said, Sherlock nodded seriously, and then continued. That's right, because of this incident, you in the future can almost be said to have broken up with the captain, and the entire Avengers were split as well. After hearing what Sherlock said, Tony also showed a bitter expression on his face, and looked at Sherlock, and said in a panic, honestly, Sherlock, sometimes knowing too much is not necessarily a good thing. If I didn't know these things, I could kill the Winter Soldier without any psychological burden and avenge my parents. But now that you have told me everything, I don't know what to do. Isn't it ridiculous? The famous Iron Man, the richest man Tony Stark, faced with the monstrous hatred of his parents being killed, actually had a heart of saintliness and didn't know what to do. Tony's eyes were a little red as he spoke. Seeing Tony's look, Sherlock sighed softly and went forward to hug his uncle, who liked to do everything on his shoulders alone. Patting Tony's back hard, Sherlock said, My dear Uncle Tony, I'm not telling you this to make you sacrifice anything for the team, but to give you a choice, just like I did when I faced Obadiah Stane. But whether you choose to retaliate against the Winter Soldier or find the high-level Hydra executives behind the scenes, the choice is yours, and I will always stand behind you and support you. Tony laughed hard after listening to Sherlock's words. After thinking for a long time, Tony became unusually serious and said seriously to his nephew, who he had seen since childhood, "I need time, Sherlock. There are many things I need to confirm with my own eyes." "Okay, I have a way for you to confirm with your own eyes without being discovered by anyone, but it costs money." As Sherlock said that he had to pay, his originally serious face quickly put on a wretched and vulgar smile like a profiteer, and he casually shook out the cloak he exchanged for the remaining gold, and said to Tony, "Look here, the legendary cloak of the god of death, which can make people completely invisible, and any instrument and detection method cannot detect it. A ton of gold is worth it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 197. The fun people go to battle. In the afternoon, Tony left with a worried look on his face following the 6*6 pickup truck that Happy had delivered the gold to. Of course, when he left, he did not forget to take the invisible cloak that he had rented with a ton of gold. Yes, you read that right, it was rented. According to Sherlock, it was such a magical artifact, of course it was impossible to give it to you directly. After all, this thing was unique, unless this invisible cloak was completely damaged, or Sherlock changed the world. Otherwise he would never be able to exchange it for a second one. But even if it could be exchanged, Sherlock did not want to exchange it. After all, the value of this thing was too expensive. If it weren't for Tony, who was a big sucker, Sherlock would probably say goodbye to the magic potion, which was so useful and fun. As for the fact that Tony had cheated her of a ton and a half of gold, Sherlock had no burden at all. After all, he was the richest man in the world, and Tony could probably earn this ton and a half of gold in his sleep at night. After seeing Tony off, Sherlock also took a break, then happily heated up the leftovers from lunch, and cooked some porridge for dinner, and then called the captain and the black sister to eat. After all, it has been decided that the action will continue after dinner, so Sherlock will not delay too long. Of course, the captain, who is an old soldier in World War II, and the black sister, who is a senior spy, will naturally not let Sherlock go. Maybe because Sherlock said that he could predict at the beginning and then took out the magic book as evidence, the black sister and the captain may really believe Sherlock's lies. While eating dinner, they kept trying to get some information about the future from Sherlock. Can Sherlock open his mouth and say it? It's impossible. After all, for Sherlock, helping this time is small, and the main purpose is to watch the movie directly on the spot. Therefore, Sherlock directly rejected the captain and the black sister's cheating behavior with righteous words, and said righteously that the prophecy is confidential. Once the content is known, the prophecy itself loses its meaning, and so on to fool the two. Anyway, the meaning behind the words is that I'm just here to watch the fun. When I need to take action, I will definitely take action, but please ignore my existence at other times. As smart people, Black Widow and Captain America did not understand what Sherlock meant. This guy made their blood pressure rise. When they were emotional, they looked at each other and saw regret in each other's eyes. In their hearts, they cursed themselves for the 10,800th time. How could they think so badly that they actually ran to such a thing's house to steal equipment? Although the two of them were extremely uncomfortable, they still had to live, right? After knowing that Sherlock was just a tool who was just here to watch the fun, Captain America and Black Widow began to discuss the next plan. The first point is that the two of them already knew that Hydra was hiding in SHIELD, and after so many years, the two of them dared not imagine what Hydra had developed into with the resources of SHIELD. Therefore, the primary goal is to find a helper. After all, if the wizard is not Sherlock, then the captain and the black sister are still very happy. However, since they know that the wizard and Sherlock are the same person, the two have begun to have some PTSD about the wizard. Secondly, since Hydra has been saying that it has been hidden inside S.H.I.E.L.D. for so many years and no one has discovered it, why is Hydra willing to expose itself now and even attack the Captain and the Black Sister directly? What cards does Hydra have that make them think they can suppress the Avengers or even tear their faces directly? These are all big problems. The two gathered together and chatted for a long time. Although Sherlock knew the answers to these questions, and she still hugged his arms and drank porridge while listening to the discussion of the two with bright eyes. No one can refuse the feeling of participating in the movie in person. No one. Finally, after a series of discussions, the two finally made a plan. First of all, regarding the helper, the captain meant that he knew a very good helper and they could go to him for help. As for the intelligence on the Hydra side, it was very simple. Just catch a tongue. Moreover, the two agreed that the Citwell agent who they rescued from the freighter, and whose code name was My Idol Iron Man, and who could beat 10 American werewolf captains was a good target. Well, there was absolutely no personal emotion involved. The captain could pat his chest and say that the reaction was so big at the beginning was purely because of Sherlock's potion and had nothing to do with the captain himself. Seeing that the two had already set the target, Sherlock, as a tool man, was very conscious. After using magic to quickly clean up the table, he pulled the tie rope he had been wearing in front of the two. With Sherlock's movements, countless metal strips with a width similar to that of bandages began to emerge from the buttons on the tie rope. Although those metal strips flashed with metallic luster, they seemed to be the softest silk, and they quickly covered Sherlock's whole body according to the lines Sherlock had set at the beginning. It was only a short while later that a gentleman wearing an elegant suit and a coat appeared in front of the captain and the black wife. To be honest, apart from Sherlock's bad taste, just looking at Sherlock's current makeup, this is definitely a dream man that can make all women scream. In front of the captain and the Black Sister, Sherlock performed a wave of hairspray hands with the same style as the blue dye, and he was even more charming. With a flip of his wrist, the wizard's cyberpunk helmet full of technology appeared in Sherlock's hand. You really don't say. This scene made the captain and the Black Sister, who are muggles, stunned. The two even felt like they had watched a whole magic show. After all, they watched Sherlock turn from a handsome guy into an elegant gentleman full of mystery. But soon, Sherlock broke their beautiful fantasy. Don't be stupid, both of you. Get ready for action. Fun people are ready to attack. After hearing Sherlock's words, the captain and the Black Sister reacted, and at the same time, the filter just now was directly shattered to the ground. Damn, what kind of evil did I have just now that I felt that Sherlock, who changed his clothes, felt a little reliable? Even if Sherlock has turned into a flower, he is still the unreliable bastard who writes Sherlock and reads it as unreliable. Chapter 198 Falcon. Damn. Again. After the two of them came back to their senses and looked at each other, they saw full of helplessness in each other's eyes. And I don't know if it's an illusion. Since the two came to Sherlock, it seems that the tacit understanding between the two has improved. Silently following Sherlock, the two came directly to the parking lot. Looking at Sherlock's customized Shelby Raptor Badger version, the captain and the Black Sister finally breathed a sigh of relief. At least this time the means of transportation is much better. God knows how the two of them got here all the way. That guy was either stealing a car or on the way to steal a car, and he had to perform a speed and passion from time to time. At least this time there is no need to perform speed and passion. Seeing Sherlock come to the main driver's seat and open the door, the Black Sister and the captain breathed a sigh of relief. At least Sherlock didn't do anything fancy this time. But soon they knew that they relaxed too early. After Sherlock opened the main driver's door, he bent over and put something in the car's central control, and then quickly closed the door. At this time, Black Widow and the captain had just opened the car door, and seeing that Sherlock had not gotten in, they closed the door directly. They were in a dilemma, whether to get in or not. Finally, Sherlock spoke. "Why are you standing there? Close the door. When I'm done, we'll go directly to Washington. If I remember correctly, the helper you're looking for, Sam Wilson, is in Washington, right?" After listening to Sherlock's words, Black Widow and the captain, who didn't know what Sherlock was going to do, could only close the car door blankly and stood beside this expensive pickup truck at a loss. Seeing that the car door had been closed, Sherlock no longer hesitated and began to wave his wand. Along with Sherlock's movements, a soft white light instantly emerged from Sherlock's wand and quickly surrounded the entire pickup truck. The captain and Black Widow stared in amazement at the full-size pickup truck that was taller than a person, and it became about the size of a toy under the cover of Sherlock's magic. Seeing that it was almost shrunk, Sherlock nodded with satisfaction, put his helmet on his head, and then put his beloved car into his library with satisfaction. After all, according to Sherlock's idea, after dealing with Washington, he can drive all the way back to New York, which can be regarded as a post-war leisure, and he can also openly use his magic to transform his pickup truck along the way. God knows how long Sherlock endured to restrain his desire to expand the pickup truck with the traceless expansion spell, in order to prevent the serpent shield from catching him. The two watched Sherlock turn a huge pickup truck into a toy, and then watched Sherlock put the toy-sized pickup truck in his hand, and it disappeared without a trace in an instant. Black Widow and the captain said that they were also enlightened. But what the two did not expect was that something more eye-opening was still to come. Sherlock did not stop after the pickup truck disappeared, pointing to the open space not far from the few people, and began to draw a circle with his wand. As Sherlock moved, a spark suddenly appeared in the air only 3 or 5 meters away from the others, and then the sparks grew larger and larger. In less than 2 seconds, a portal made of sparks appeared in front of Black Widow and the captain. On one side of the portal was the parking lot of Sherlock's house, and on the other side was a dirty and dark alley. After opening the portal, Sherlock took the lead and crossed the portal. Looking at Black Widow and the captain who were still standing there, Sherlock was also a little confused and urged with a hint of doubt. "What are you doing? Hurry up and catch up. Aren't you going to Washington?" Sherlock's words made the captain and Black Widow want to curse. "If you have this ability, why don't you say it earlier? Do you know why we have to wait until night to start the action? Isn't it because we want to drive directly from New York to Washington under the cover of night? It will be dawn when we arrive, and it won't be delayed at all to find someone to kill. Now you actually tell me that I can go directly to Washington as long as I cross that fire circle? Damn, my stomach is broken. It seems like a joke that I slept all afternoon while driving at night." For the 10,801st time, the two of them regretted coming to Sherlock to get the equipment. Of course, although they cursed in their hearts, on the surface, they were still very sincere. After Sherlock urged them, they quickly followed Sherlock's footsteps and crossed the portal. The two people who felt the convenience of magic for the first time were still a little bit unbelievable. Black Widow even took out her mobile phone on the spot to confirm the location. After seeing that she was indeed in Washington, Black Widow could only sigh at the magic of magic. It is really convenient to be able to cross a city in an instant. Even Black Widow can imagine what this thing will do if it is discovered by Hydra. For a moment, Black Widow actually understood why Sherlock had hidden his identity from the beginning. Although the two had mixed feelings in their hearts, Sherlock obviously didn't care so much. Looking at the stunned captain and Black Widow, Sherlock even had some doubts about whether he had encountered a fake. After closing the portal, Sherlock waved his hand in front of the two men, interrupting their thoughts. Sherlock spoke. "Okay, let's proceed to the next plan. Captain, where is the home of your good friend Sam Wilson? Give me the address." After hearing Sherlock's words, the captain finally came to his senses and quickly told Sherlock the address of Falcon's home, without even reacting to Sherlock's inappropriate title of good friend. After knowing the address, Sherlock took out the map on his mobile phone and looked at it. He knew what was going on. He immediately grabbed the captain with one hand and Black Widow with the other hand without any hesitation. Before the two could react, Sherlock's face under the helmet showed a malicious smile and said to the two men, "Okay, it might be a bit uncomfortable next. Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go. Wait ... quote asterisk 2. Before the captain and Black Widow finished their words, Sherlock took them to apparate. In an instant, the captain and Black Widow felt as if they were stuffed into an extremely thin rubber tube. The most important thing is that this rubber tube is not straight, it is called a winding one. When the two of them stepped on the ground again, they were no longer in front of the dirty and dark alley, but a small villa that looked very delicate. Before the two of them could react, Sherlock had already pressed the doorbell on the gate. It might be a coincidence that Falcon was not far from the gate at this time. After hearing the doorbell, Falcon opened his own door in less than 10 seconds. As soon as the door opened, Falcon saw the pale-faced Captain and Black Widow, and Sherlock standing behind them with a funny expression. Seeing that Falcon had already opened the door, the Captain could only try to force a smile on his pale face. "Hello, Sam, this is Natasha, long time no see asterisk." Too well, the Captain and Black Widow still couldn't escape the side effects of the first apparition. Before they finished speaking, they had sex in front of Falcon. The moment Falcon opened the door and saw Sherlock, he felt something was wrong. The moment the Captain had sex, before he finished speaking, Falcon's mind was full of the scene of Sherlock turning into a quality captain after giving the Captain drugs. He jumped up and roared loudly. "Really? Damn. Again." Chapter 199 Loki Happy Gate. Half an hour later, the Captain, Black Widow, Sherlock and Falcon were in the living room of Falcon's house. The Captain finally explained the whole story to Falcon after much persuasion. In order to make his words more credible, the Captain even asked Sherlock to let Falcon feel his magic that could run from one place to another in a flash. The Captain's original words. Sherlock naturally had no reason to refuse. It was all fun anyway. As a fun person, Sherlock certainly would not refuse such fun. "You really don't say it." Sherlock was the first to see what a black man's face turned pale. How should I put it? The whitening effect is very good. Falcon's skin is obviously a degree whiter. However, after all, he was from the Air Force, and his resistance to such space teleportation magic was much better than that of Black Widow and the Captain, who were both in the army. He did not have such a big reaction as Black Widow and the Captain, but only turned pale. As soon as he returned to his living room, Falcon warned Sherlock with a pale face but a serious tone. Unless he is in a life and death crisis, he should never let himself experience such a feeling again in the future. Well, in Falcon's words, the training of the Air Force was not as effective as Sherlock's apparition. If you really get used to apparition, the dizziness training of the Air Force can be said to be a child's play. Of course, in this half an hour, the Captain did not just explain that he really did not intend to you in front of Falcon, but also explained the cause and effect of himself and Black Widow being wanted. The Captain explained everything clearly, including SHIELD and Hydra. As a descendant of the former Howling Commandos, Falcon naturally believed what the Captain said. After all, when he was a child, he heard his elders tell him about Hydra. Whether it was out of the responsibility of a former soldier or the friendship with the Captain now, Falcon certainly agreed to the Captain's request for help without any hesitation. Seeing that the first step of the plan was very successful, Black Widow, who had almost recovered, immediately stood up and prepared to leave to get information about Sitwell. After all, now several people are in the dark, and she is an old spy. When it comes to intelligence, Black Widow believes that she is not inferior to anyone in the Avengers. Of course, this does not include Sherlock, who claims to have mastered the art of prophecy and can cheat, and is now lying on the sofa like a salted fish. After all, the so-called prophecy is too buggy, and Black Widow has not yet thought of competing with Sherlock. Of course, Black Widow also tried hard to get the current location of Sitwell from Sherlock. Sherlock was also confused by Black Widow's efforts. Good guy, he really thinks he knows everything. Who knows where the bald guy with glasses, called Beast Ping is? The movie didn't say it. Don't say that Sherlock's prophecy is a fox like Tiger's power. Even if it is real, prophecy is not used like this. Seeing that no useful information can be obtained, Black Widow can only sigh and honestly run out to collect intelligence using her traditional methods. As for the remaining 3 men, what else can be done? If you ask Captain and Falcon to fight, none of them are afraid, but if you ask the 2 to get intelligence, forget it. It is better to ask them to attack the Trident building of SHIELD directly. As for Sherlock, well, this guy is a good hand. His mysterious magic will definitely have unexpected effects, but look at his salted fish look. If you want to ask him to go out and collect intelligence with you, you might as well expect the sun to rise from the west tomorrow. Well, it can only be said that Black Widow is worthy of being Black Widow. She is not ashamed of her identity as an old spy. Black Widow returned to Falcon's home before dawn, and also returned the address of the bald guy with glasses and the route to work every day. After the discussion, several people immediately made a bold decision to knock him out with a club, and then join forces with Falcon to perform a high-altitude freefall. There is no fear that this guy will not confess. If you say to arrest this guy head-on, Sherlock may not be interested, but if you say to knock him out with a club, Sherlock will immediately get excited. Before the few people finished discussing, Sherlock had already prepared a sack and a bat, and the electronic expression on the mask also switched to an eager look, which made the few people sweat. Falcon, who had little contact with Sherlock, even smiled awkwardly and secretly complained to the captain whether Sherlock had any special hobbies or not. In response, the captain could only pat Falcon on the shoulder with a complicated expression and said nothing more. Of course, the final result was still good. Sherlock was responsible for flashing the sack, Black Widow was responsible for knocking the club, and the captain was responsible for carrying people to the car. The small process was very smooth. The poor bald boy with glasses, Sitwell, had just walked out of the house and was kidnapped by several people before he figured out what was going on. When he woke up again, he found himself on a high-rise rooftop. The captain and Black Widow were grabbing his collar and asking him what Hydra's plan was, while the Wizard of the Avengers stood behind them calmly without saying a word. Sitwell sneered at this. As a player who had studied the captain, Sitwell knew that, as long as the captain was still here, he would not have any worries about his life. He even mocked Black Widow for being wanted for no reason. How could Black Widow tolerate him? She immediately kicked Sitwell down the building. To be honest, when Black Widow kicked him down, Sitwell's heart sank. Damn, did he estimate it wrong? In those 2 seconds, Sitwell almost began to recall the regrets of his life, and it seemed that a revolving lantern had begun to appear in front of him. Just when Sitwell was lamenting that his life was over, he felt that his collar was suddenly grabbed by someone, and then a huge force drove him to fly to the rooftop just now. After a while, he returned to the rooftop where he had just been kicked down. This time, Sitwell was very calm. Sure enough, as long as the captain was here, he would definitely not worry about his life. At that moment, the whole person began to be arrogant, and he looked like a loyal dog slave to the King dynasty. Black Widow and the captain's fists were hard. At that moment, he wanted Falcon to let this hateful bald boy with glasses experience the feeling of free fall again. Just as Falcon was about to act, Sherlock called a few people. While they were still not able to react, Sherlock quickly took out his magic wand and waved it. A portal suddenly appeared under the feet of the bald boy with glasses, who had not yet reacted. The other portal was just above the bald boy with glasses, who had just fallen. An infinite loop space of freefall similar to Loki's was formed. Sherlock did not hesitate at all. With a wave of his magic wand, the 2 portals above and below closed immediately and disappeared. Looking at the disappeared portal, Sherlock coughed calmly and said to Black Widow, Falcon and the captain beside him, "Well, let's go have a cup of coffee and have some breakfast." But it was obvious that the captain and the other 2 were still quite anxious about where Sherlock had sent the bald boy with glasses who had disappeared. Faced with the anxious inquiries of the 3 people, Sherlock could only cough and answer slowly. How should I put it? He should still be in freefall. Don't you want to use this method to interrogate Hydra's subsequent plans? I think this guy doesn't seem to be afraid of the few seconds of free fall of the Falcon, so just give him a big one. Let's go eat first. There's no rush. Let him fall for half an hour before talking. If he still doesn't say anything, I have other ways. Don't worry. Chapter 200 Falcon, I should be under the car, not here. Facts have proved that no matter how beautiful and attractive the propaganda of freedom and democracy in the United States is, in the life of the century, all kinds of discrimination are still ubiquitous. Even if you change the world in the United States, Falcon can be said to have a say in this. Although Comrade Falcon has not traveled through the world, for now, Comrade Falcon can also immerse himself in the above theory. The experience of several people in this ordinary American breakfast shop is enough for Comrade Falcon to know. In just such a short time, the captain received about 20 email chats and about a dozen small notes with contact information. And the Black Sister also received various bold declarations of love from women, from old ladies to little girls. All of them flirted with the Black Sister. As for the contact information in the pocket, it is countless, and there are even several room cards. As the most popular Avenger in the Battle of New York, second only to Iron Man in terms of popularity, and the most mysterious Avenger in the Avengers, Sherlock naturally received more attention. During the short time of breakfast, Sherlock was constantly approached by people who wanted to take photos and autographs. Some girls were bold and unrestrained and tried to seduce Sherlock. Sherlock was at a loss and could only use magic to separate himself from the fanatical crowd. The main point was that he could only look but not touch. On the other hand, what about Falcon? Poor Falcon received a lot of looks like how can you have breakfast with an Avenger and a pair of handsome men and beautiful women? No one paid any attention to him. Even if there were occasional people, they were just trying to get the contact information of the other 3 people from him. What? Why did Black Widow receive bold love confessions from girls, while Captain America received only boys? This question should start from the rooftop full of stories at the beginning. As we all know, Black Widow and Captain America were wanted due to the strong connections of the Snake Shield. In other words, it was a pipe dream to want to appear in the breakfast shop openly. But after Sherlock made this suggestion, both Black Widow, Captain America and Falcon were very tempted. After all, you can't expect a single old man like Falcon to make breakfast for everyone, right? As for Black Widow, let alone, after a busy night, God knows how attractive a cup of hot coffee and a sandwich with crispy bacon and soft golden scrambled eggs will be to Black Widow. And it just so happens that every time there is such an unsolvable situation, it is a good time for Sherlock to appear. Looking at the hope in everyone's eyes, Sherlock waved the wand in his hand without hesitation. In just a short while, Black Widow and Captain America changed their appearance. It's just that due to Sherlock's own little bad taste, the changes of Black Widow and Captain America are more obvious. Let's talk about Black Widow first. Under Sherlock's human body deformation, in just a few breaths, a limited edition Henry Cavill wearing a black quick-drying combat uniform and black military boots appeared in front of everyone. What? Don't know Henry Cavill? Does Superman know him? It's the guy who played the resurrected Superman in the Justice League. As for the captain, I'm sorry, Sherlock gave the captain a Gal Gadot look for symmetry. But compared to the battle skirt with a gleaming metallic light in the movie, the clothes Sherlock arranged for the captain were not so friendly. A black suspended dress. The captain was in a bad mood. At that moment, the long-lost memory of Sherlock's work on him began to attack him. The captain, who had lived for so long, had never felt so insecure as he did now. He didn't even know where to put his hands for a while. He pulled it up and down, and always felt that this suit was always on the verge of exposure. As one of the captain's good friends, Comrade Falcon, who had been bullied by the captain for many years, how could he miss such a good opportunity? Seeing the captain turned into a beautiful girl, he immediately stepped forward and hugged the captain's shoulders and began to comfort CPU. Words like "it's just breakfast, it's just a short time, do you see no reaction from Black Widow about graduation?" are endless. It can be said that the racial talent is maximumed out. Sherlock even feels like he is listening to rap. Of course, if it weren't for the corners of Falcon's mouth that are harder to suppress than act, and the teasing eyes that keep wandering around, and the whistles that appear from time to time when rapping, the captain might really believe Falcon's comfort. Looking at the smile on Falcon's face, the captain swore that he regretted for the 10,802nd time why did he have a brain to go to Sherlock to fall into the trap. However, compared with the captain, Black Widow on the other side is undoubtedly much calmer. It's not the first time she has become a man. Black Widow is a little used to it. She calmly took out the MacUp mirror she carried with her and looked at herself. You know what? Black Widow was also narcissistic for a while. No woman can resist Superman's godly face. After narcissistically touching Superman's face, Black Widow looked down at her body. You know what? Big pectoral muscles, 8-pack abs, all missing. Anyway, she has become a man, so Black Widow doesn't care and just reaches out to touch it. Really, I eat my own tofu. You know what? It feels really good. In addition to a faint sense of guilt in her heart, Black Widow admits that this male body, from the face to the figure, is definitely a weapon to kill women. For some reason, Black Widow subconsciously glanced at the captain who was standing aside and being repeatedly teased by Falcon. The captain happened to look up at Black Widow. When the two looked at each other, the captain had a common stress reaction of a girl. Instinctively, he stayed away from Black Widow and took a step back, subconsciously hugged his chest with his hands, staring at Black Widow who had become a strong man, with a face full of vigilance. The captain's reaction was so shocking that not only Black Widow, but even Falcon and Sherlock were stunned for a while. After more than 30 seconds of silence, the three people on the rooftop burst into deafening laughter, mixed with the captain's shrill female voice trying to explain. The captain regretted for the 10,803th time, thinking that he must have been crazy to go to Sherlock. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.